Chapter 1582. Rise. At that instant, purple lightning divine lord roared. Sword chi spanned 5 kilometers and purple lightning bolts as thick as dragons flashed across the sky, thrusting towards Jiang Tian. The moment the sword was unleashed, it gave people the illusion that all the ancient gods were attacking at the same time. It was the sword Dao fragments and lightning slaughter Dao fragments that were refined by their divine souls and blood. Such a strike shook the grotto heaven for hundreds of kilometers. The grotto heaven's barrier trembled rapidly and the scenery outside was distorted. The power of the strike could be said to be domineering and invincible. It was as though all demons and monsters would be annihilated and all the gods and demons would be slaughtered. That strike is too powerful. We were too rash. If it was Purple Lightning Divine Lord who attacked just now, a purple lightning bolt would have killed all of us. All the assassins in the human world shuddered with fear and trepidation. Even nascent soul heavenly lords felt that they could not withstand that strike. Even soul formation experts did not have the means to deal with it. Even Divine Lord Xian Nu and Divine Lord Sun Shao were shocked and impressed. Purple Lightning Divine Lord's strength was in no way inferior to theirs. It was only because of his fiery temper that he did not take on the position of Grand Elder or Sect Master. You are still far from it. Jiang Tian's eyes were calm without any ripples. He waved his hand and the green lotus golden lotus appeared in his hand. He swung it down. Rumble. The green lotus golden lotus looked beautiful, but its offensive power was terrifying. It contained 2 metal and wood elemental Dao fragments and was once ranked 10th on the list of rare flowers and herbs in the cultivation world. There was even a hint of chaos aura lingering around it. After being refined by Jiang Tian, it was extremely terrifying. Among Jiang Tian's Dharma treasures, it was second only to the Stone Mother Cauldron and Absolute Heaven Sword. However, as the latter two were too eye-catching, Jiang Tian had already treated the green golden lotus as his main Dharma treasure. With that swing, chaos aura fell like silk. Countless golden lotus petals spread out and shone brightly. They turned into a millstone the size of a small hill. It was like a shooting star or a golden crow rising into the sky. The metal laws and great Dao fragments were extremely sharp and condensed as they shot out in all directions. This looks like the ancient lotus that the Ruins Emperor had in his imperial residence in the northern sea world. It grew in the Black Nether Frost Spring and he actually refined it into a treasure. There is even a trace of primal chaos chi. Sir God Xian Nu and Sir God Sun Shao were shocked. They looked at each other and started to feel anxious and worried. Clang! This explosion was like a myriad of thunderbolts exploding, and it shook the sky. The golden lotus and the thunderbolt god-slaying sword collided together. In an instant, the golden lotus petals were like countless meteors shooting across the sky, causing the latter to tremble incessantly. Countless lightning dragons and sword rays collapsed, causing everyone's hair to stand on end. Then, with a loud rumble, the lightning slaughter devil slayer sword could no longer bear it. It flew out diagonally and cut a mountain in half. Purple Lightning Lord spat out a mouthful of blood and was sent flying 10 miles away. His face was as pale as a sheet of paper. The thunder laws and great Dao fragments around him were on the verge of shattering. His aura dropped rapidly as his body trembled, revealing a look of horror. This guy is so powerful. How can he be a native of the ancient earth? The remaining energy waves continued to surge forward, destroying everything in its path. Thousands of cultivators from the Aqua Moon Grotto Heaven were blown away. Screams were heard and blood was spurting out. They were crushed by the thunderbolts and the primal chaos chi. Activate the array and fall back. Even perfected Sir God Xian Nu felt terrible. He waved his hand and gave an order. Fall back. Fall back. Many disciples who were struggling at death's door retreated with panic and fear in their eyes. Many colorful and oddly shaped shields were activated, and they hid within them. Otherwise, they would be shattered within seconds. They had heard about Jiang Tian's fierce reputation before, but they had always been prejudiced and didn't believe it at all. After all, they had enslaved the natives of the deity ground for too long, stepping on them like ants and abusing them. The descendants of the wanderers in the deity ground and the natives, such as Long Shengnan, Wu Shujian and Bai Muxue, could only live in the second-level and third-level worlds. They weren't qualified to enter the deity ruins. They had to be extraordinary and go through many rounds of selection. In their eyes, Jiang Tian was even more unbearable. He was the root of the ancient earth. Compared to the wanderers in the celestial land, the celestial land was where the ancient celestial court was located. The ancient earth was slightly inferior. It was equivalent to the mortal world, and it was like an ant in a garbage dump. And yet, they finally realized how terrifying Jiang Tian was after seeing him that day. He had defeated the Grand Elder, Purple Lightning Lord. He wasn't an ant. He had the power of a fiend god. Kong Teichu is only a nascent soul cultivator, but he's so powerful that he can defeat a deity. No wonder the 7 deities are loyal to him. At this moment, Ji Tao couldn't believe it and was dumbfounded. Then he suddenly understood a lot of things. If Jiang Tian was a soul formation cultivator, it wouldn't be surprising if he had the power of a soul formation cultivator. However, Jiang Tian was only a nascent soul cultivator, but he was able to fight against a soul formation cultivator, which could only be because his cultivation art was more advanced. That way, the 7 deities would be able to become more powerful with his guidance. He's so powerful. Senior Taichu is invincible. Ji Tianlan's face was full of admiration. Her eyes were glittering, as if she were a fan who had seen her idol. He's indeed powerful, even Jiyusha had to admit. She had thought that Jiang Tian was just being arrogant, but that wasn't the case. But there were also old deities in the human world who shook their heads and said, "It's not that simple." The Water Moon Grotto Heaven has been able to remain standing for a long time, which means it has a lot of resources. Fellow Taoist, let me lend you a hand. As expected, Divine Lord Sun Shao heaved a sigh. He knew this battle was unavoidable. He moved 10 miles in one step and came behind Purple Lightning Lord, then slapped. A loud bang was heard. This palm brought out countless shadows that turned into the shape of 1,000-armed guanyin. It pressed down on the back of the Purple Lightning Monarch and borrowed the power of heaven and earth. Countless protective arrays in the Grotto Heaven roared as mana surged up into the sky like a river and poured into the body of the Purple Lightning Monarch. Divine Lord Sun Shao was the chief Grand Elder and his power was even higher than Divine Lord Xiannu's. Only he could mobilize the power of the entire Grotto Heaven. With the help of Sir God Sun Shao, Sir God Purple Lightning's vital energy and blood were recovering rapidly. There was a loud rumble. His Purple Lightning Dharma and the shards of the Great Path became solid again. Countless Purple Lightning dragons soared into the sky, roaring and waving their tails, crushing the space. With a clang, the thunder-slaying sword flew back into Yi Chen's hand. The sword had become 1 mile long, like a jade pillar that supported the heavens and the earth. The sword light and the lightning dragon interweaved and coiled around each other, dazzling and dazzling, like 10 suns rising into the sky together. After receiving more power, Purple Lightning Lord thanked Jiang Tian softly. He stared at Jiang Tian fiercely and said coldly, "How dare you? How dare you? You actually dare to injure this old man." At that moment he was really furious. Jiang Tian's attack had affected his divine treasures and cracked them. If it weren't for Divine Lord Sun Zhao's help and the timely nourishment of the Grand Array, his power would have dropped to the half-step to the soul formation realm. He would have to cultivate for a few hundred years to return to the peak. How could he not be angry? "You've completely infuriated me. After I kill you in this battle, I will crush all of your followers and the worlds that support you, such as the Dragon Gate and Ingzhou, into smithereens. I'll even chase you to Earth and eat your parents and brothers alive." He was at the 3rd level of the soul formation realm and his eyes were already able to interfere with the space. His eyes were like lightning that shot out a few hundred meters long and created many small holes in the space. It was extremely terrifying. Kong Teichu, we're connected to the Water Moon Grotto Heaven and we've become one. Even if you injure me 10 times, I won't be afraid. Every time he said something, his energy became stronger and the purple thunderbolts on his body became denser. In the end, they turned into a thunder ring that covered an area with a radius of 1,000 feet. On the other hand, the entire area within 3 kilometers had transformed into an ocean of lightning. Countless strands of the laws of lightning and grand Tao fragments filled the area, and it formed a domain. That was a domain. Among the soul formation overlords, only peak-stage divine lords or the most talented ones could perform such a domain, which was many times more powerful than the forbidden area of a nascent soul heavenly lord. In short, the forbidden area of a nascent soul cultivator used the essence chi in the world to freeze the space and prevent the opponent from escaping. However, a domain was when a soul formation grand cultivator merged the Dharma laws into the world and brought the land under his control. In such a domain, the soul formation cultivator would be the Lord. He could control life and death, and every move he made would be like an entity. Besides, the forbidden area of a nascent soul cultivator was different from the forbidden area of a nascent soul cultivator, which was only used to freeze the opponent. There were more variations in the domain. It could be used to destroy, crush, disintegrate, burn, thunder, and suppress the soul. Be careful, Senior Taichu. Ji Tao shouted. He had never thought that Purple Lightning Divine Lord would be able to perform a domain with the help of the Grotto Heaven Array. Jiang Tian only smiled, and the 10-foot divine wheel behind him spun. The Kuan Peng, the eternal gung metal, and the thunder dragon appeared and roared. The next second, Jiang Tian opened his right hand and grabbed. A long halberd formed from the laws of Kuan Peng, surrounded by the laws of thunder and lightning, and completely forged from the laws of aged metal, fell into his hand. Clang! The halberd shot through the air like an illusion. It ignored dozens of miles of void and easily broke through the domain of thunder and lightning. In a flash, it arrived in front of Purple Lightning Monarch and directly pierced through the divine treasure in his chest. After that attack, Purple Lightning Divine Lord died. I don't believe that I can't kill you. Jiang Tian coldly snickered. His arrogance was boundless. It was as if a god had descended to the mortal world. Chapter 1583. Divine Lord Purple Lightning, who had been invincible for 1,000 years and was one of the top cultivators in the ruins of deities, had died with a simple attack? The two Sir Gods, Sun Shao and Xian Nu, were dumbfounded. They couldn't believe it. Of course, they knew that a soul formation grand cultivator had many divine powers and wouldn't be killed that easily. And yet, they were still shocked by Jiang Tian's attack. What's that? Ji Yusha turned pale and was shocked. I didn't see it clearly. I only saw a golden light surrounded by thunderbolts and a golden halberd. He didn't use any Dharma treasures. How did he release the golden halberd? Was it an attack of laws? That attack of laws is too terrifying. It could even break the territory of a soul formation cultivator. Cold sweat ran down Ji Tao's forehead. He knew that if he were to face Jiang Tian's attack, there would be no chance for him to escape. It's indeed an attack of laws. There seems to be 3 laws of thunder, metal, and space. That's terrifying. There was a veteran semi-god realm cultivator in the mortal world. He had white hair and beard, and all his teeth had fallen out. No one knew how long he had lived. He could be called a living fossil. Even he was deeply shocked. What? 3 laws? The eyes of the assassins in the human world almost popped out after hearing that. They couldn't believe it. Many disciples of the Water Moon Grotto Heaven were enraged and sighed. Even Sir God Sun Shao squinted his eyes and stared coldly at Jiang Tian. His murderous intent was revealed, and he quickly activated the Dong Tian protecting formation to attack Sir God Purple Lightning. Bastard! How dare an ant from a remote galaxy injure my divine treasures? Divine Lord Purple Lightning stood in the territory. His broken body was enveloped by the territory and countless thunderbolts were released. Those thunderbolts were connected like silk threads and lingered around his wounds, killing the remaining 3 laws of Jiang Tian and gradually merging with each other. Under the nourishment of the array, Divine Lord Purple Lightning's body and divine treasures were gradually repaired. However, there were still cracks on his chest. No matter how he refined them with the Purple Lightning Law, the cracks couldn't be completely repaired. Apparently, even if his body and divine treasures were repaired, he still wasn't at his peak. Divine Lord Purple Lightning looked at Jiang Tian with anger and a hint of suspicion. He could feel how terrifying Jiang Tian's 3 laws were. If it wasn't for the fact that he had grasped a trace of the great Tao of lightning and cultivated a domain that could cripple the invading nomological laws and repair his body, as well as be nourished by the Grotto Heaven Grand Protective Array, he would have definitely died. Moreover, it was still very difficult for him to repair his physical body and divine treasures. That was very unusual. The soul formation Dharma laws already contained fragments of the Grand Tao. The weak Dharma laws that could crush nascent soul-level Dharma laws were as easy as cutting tofu with a steel knife. At this moment, the corners of Sir God Xian Nu's eyes twitched. He communicated with Sir God Sun Shao through divine sense and suddenly took a step forward. Although he was unwilling, he still said respectfully, "My fellow cultivator, you can take away 1/3 of the wind and rain flag. It should be enough for you to break through once. Let's stop here." An elder at the first level of the divine transformation realm also walked out and shouted, "Kong Te Chu, don't make a mistake. The Purple Lightning Celestial Monarch is the second most important figure in our Grotto Heaven. If you kill him, the Grotto Heaven will definitely take revenge on you. By then, there will be bloodshed and countless lives will be lost. The 7 bandits and the assassins dynasties will all be affected. Why bother? Besides, if the soul formation realm cultivators attack together, what do you think your chances of winning are?" Many senior members of the Aquamoon Grotto Heaven spoke, threatening and tempting, not wanting to fall out with Jiang Tian. After all, Jiang Tian had the power to kill soul formation realm cultivators. "Get out of my way." Jiang Tian said coldly, "I can let the Aquamoon Grotto Heaven go, but this guy is heartless. I must kill him." "My fellow cultivator, the 6 Grotto Heavens are on the same side. If you kill the Purple Lightning Celestial Monarch and severely injure our Grotto Heaven, we won't offend the 6 Grotto Heavens. That's not just a matter of offending one of my sects, but the entire 6 Great Paradises will view you as a mortal enemy." Sir God Sun Shao suppressed his anger and said coldly, "If you stop now, the old man can definitely mediate. During the battle between you and the Ruins Emperor's Palace, the 6 Grotto Heavens will stay in the middle. I'm sure you'll make a wise decision with your wisdom." Jiang Tian only replied with one word, "Kill." The 30-foot wheel behind him spun again and a golden spear was formed in his hand again. Jiang Tian was like the god of war as he swung his spear. 3 or 4 peak stage nascent soul realm cultivators were split in half and even their nascent soul divine souls were destroyed. The soul formation elder and the 2 Sir Gods, Sun Shao and Xian Nu, were forced to retreat 10 miles away. As his cultivation increased and his immortal will became stronger, Jiang Tian was able to merge many kinds of laws into one. The spear in his hand contained the 3 laws of Kun Peng, Gung Jin and Thunder. It was extremely sharp and indestructible. "I must kill this guy today. Anyone who dares to stop me will die." Jiang Tian was like a raging storm as he launched a series of assassinations towards Purple Lightning Lord. Not even a soul formation overlord could resist him. Divine Lord Xian Nu held the sky seizing divine hammer in his hand. The law of water lingered and the law of thunder exploded. It was like a dragon falling down, but it was sent flying by Jiang Tian's halberd. One of his arms was cracked and bleeding. "Kong Te Chu, you're too arrogant." Sir Sun Shao was enraged and he took out the water spirit whip. The whip was crystal clear and there were all kinds of water laws flowing on it, like a beautiful crystal. As he lashed out with his whip, it was as if the heavenly river was pouring down in torrents. The essence of water came crashing down from the sky. Among them, there were flood dragons roaring, giant whales swimming, all kinds of prawn soldiers, crab generals, water demons, and water demons bearing their fangs and claws. The sky within 10 miles turned into a vast ocean and formed a domain, crushing down toward Jiang Tian. "Leaf fire burns the sky." Jiang Tian swung his spear and thrust it into the sky. Suddenly, the shadow of a red sparrow appeared on the divine plate and the law of red sparrow true fire was infused into it, forming a 10-mile fire dragon, a red sparrow and a golden crow. Half of the Grotto Heaven was lit up and it was extremely hot. Suddenly, the water vapor boiled and the essence of water dissipated. All kinds of demons and beasts were turned into ashes. Even the grand Tao and laws were destroyed and evaporated. Jiang Tianyi's long halberd was surrounded by heavenly flames that burned the sky. It was as if the ancient god of fire was burning the mountains and boiling the seas. The other nascent soul heavenly lords retreated and begged for mercy, but Jiang Tian was ruthless. He swung the spear in his hand and it shot out like a poisonous dragon, breaking their bodies easily. Their divine souls and nascent souls were also destroyed. Kong Teichu, don't make it difficult for them. I'm not afraid of fighting. Come on. Sir Purple Lightning's eyes shot out purple thunderbolts and attacked Jiang Tian with his territory. You're the one I'm going to kill. How can I let you go? Jiang Tian moved with the halberd and became one with it. He was infused with the law of Kun Peng and tore open the space, creating a winding black space crack that separated the heavens and the earth. He pierced through the domain of Sun Shao and Divine Lord Xian Nu and charged toward Divine Lord Purple Lightning like lightning. Purple Lightning territory. Sir Purple Lightning shouted. The thunder domain was activated to the extreme, turning into an ocean of lightning with a radius of 10 miles. It was extremely thick and pure, containing Dharma laws. It could sweep, crush, destroy, seal, shatter souls. It was so powerful that even a cultivator at the first level of the soul formation level would be torn to pieces in an instant. But even so, it was unable to stop Jiang Tian's halberd of laws. Like a torpedo splitting apart soft waves, Jiang Tian only needed to snap his finger to break through the laws of the Sea of Lightning and arrive before the Purple Lightning monarch. Sir Purple Lightning was shocked and yelled, "What kind of law is this? How can it be so sharp? Go to hell with your questions." Jiang Tian shook his halberd and turned it into a beam of light that pierced through heaven and earth, piercing through Purple Lightning Monarch's body and divine treasures. "Let's go!" Sun Shao and Xian Nu yelled. One took out the water spirit whip again and the other took out the sky divine hammer, attacking Jiang Tian. "Sea calming ice seal." Jiang Tian let out a soft shout and the 10-meter-long divine disc behind him spun again. The sea-calming ice god True Seal turned into a shadow and roared. Boundless ice laws surged out and formed a forbidden zone with a radius of 10 miles. It held up the sky and the earth, sealing off the sky and blocking all the attacks. It also cut off the protective array of the grotto heaven, preventing it from nourishing the Purple Lightning divine monarch. Then, no matter how Sun Shao and Xian Nu used the laws of Grand Tao, they couldn't break the forbidden territory. They could only watch Jiang Tian penetrate Sir Purple Lightning's body and divine treasures again and again. Sir Purple Lightning's laws surged several times and countless purple thunderbolts surrounded him. A terrifying realm was opened and he was revived again and again. However, Jiang Tian was ruthless. Every time he revived, Jiang Tian destroyed his realm. In the end, even his supreme treasure, the Thunder Slaughter God Slaying Sword, had its magical power erased by Jiang Tian and was snatched away by him. Sir Purple Lightning's eyes were filled with despair and fear. He almost went crazy and shouted, "Kong Teichu, where are you from? It's impossible for the solar system to have such a powerful Dharma art like yours. How can a nascent soul formation have so many terrifying laws? You're just a frog at the bottom of a well. You don't know how vast the world is." Jiang Tian's eyes were cold and murderous. He didn't show any mercy and his spear tore the space apart. This time, Sir Purple Lightning couldn't stand it anymore. His divine treasures were completely shattered and the god inside was severely injured. He screamed and flew away. "Kong Teichu, you're a devil. You've stirred up a storm of blood and destroyed the peaceful ruins of deities. You'll be punished by heaven one day and you'll die a horrible death." Sir Purple Lightning, who was half a meter tall and looked like a mini version of himself, shouted with resentment. It was like comparing a teenager with a baby. The god was thicker and more condensed than a nascent soul cultivator. He was completely made of Dharma laws and fragments. He flew up and down, trying to break Jiang Tian's realm and escape. "Return!" Jiang Tian yelled. The 10-foot divine plate behind him flashed and the Taotai divine beast roared. It turned into a black hole and swallowed Sir Purple Lightning. Sir Purple Lightning was like a small boat in the eye of a typhoon. He was torn apart in a blink and sank into the vortex, disappearing without a trace. The vortex spun and Sir Purple Lightning's organs, bones, flesh and divine treasures, which were emitting purple thunderbolts, were sucked in like bright stars. Boom! Jiang Tian's divine plate spun and withdrew all kinds of Dharma laws and divine powers. The sky was clear and only Jiang Tian was left standing above the ice god forbidden region with his hands behind his back. Friends of the Water Moon Grotto Heaven, if you're not convinced, you can come and fight with me, Kong Teichu. Jiang Tian said softly. His eyes were as calm as an ancient well without any ripples. The entire Aquamoon heavenly abode was in a deathly silence. Everyone was trembling with fear. No one dared to say a word. Chapter 1584. The wind was howling and the green mountains were green. The sun was setting in the west and the golden sunlight shone on the mountains and palaces through the barrier, gilding them. At the moment, the assassins of the human world and the cultivators of the grotto heavens were all staring at the young man whose black robe was fluttering in the wind like a flag. They watched him trample the famous Water Moon Grotto Heaven under his feet and kill the invincible Elder Purple Lightning. When Jiang Tian declared war against the Grotto Heaven, many people thought that Jiang Tian was just faking his attack and that he would run away immediately. After all, there was more than one soul formation cultivator there. More people thought that Jiang Tian had lost his mind because of the victory and that he had no idea how terrifying a grotto heaven could be. Ji Tao, Ji Mingsha, and many other divine transformation realm assassins were either full of mockery because they thought Jiang Tian was too high for them to handle, or they were worried for him. Alas! Tai Chu is only a nascent soul cultivator. How can he fight against several soul formation cultivators? Since he has succeeded, he should run away with the human world. Where there's life, there's hope. Even if he wants to destroy the Water Moon Grotto Heaven, there's no need to rush. He can deal with them slowly. If Tai Chu becomes a nascent soul cultivator, nobody in the ruins of deity will be able to defeat him. At that time, more than one assassin in the human world thought so. However, no one had expected that Jiang Tian would sweep through the army like a bolt of lightning, easily killing the Purple Lightning Lord and establishing an unparalleled ferocious reputation. Besides, Jiang Tian wasn't injured at all. Apparently, he had the upper hand and was even suppressing them. At the moment, Jiang Tian was looking at the world with disdain. Even the soul formation cultivators of the Water Moon Grotto Heaven didn't dare to look him in the eyes, let alone fight with him. That was the power of a cultivator who suppressed a grotto heaven and was invincible in the ruins of deity. It's already extraordinary that he killed Divine Lord Purple Lightning. The most important thing is that he still managed to kill him when we tried to stop him. Then, Sir God's son Shao felt bitter and he was sad. He knew that the entire Water Moon Paradise wasn't Jiang Tian's match. He finally realized that there were 9 kinds of Dharma laws inside Jiang Tian's 10-foot divine plate, which was equivalent to the power of 9 nascent soul cultivators. Most importantly, his Dharma laws were extremely advanced. They weren't any weaker than the fragments of the Grand Tao of the soul formation level. The other soul formation cultivators were also terrified. They had never seen such a terrifying cultivator. As for the nascent soul and golden core cultivators, they were scared out of their wits. They hid behind the protective shields of the major arrays and didn't even dare to show their heads. Now, I'll give you 10 seconds to consider. You have 2 choices. Submit or die. Jiang Tian's eyes were cold and gloomy. His stern voice was like a thunderclap that resounded throughout the entire Water Moon heavenly abode. Everyone's hearts trembled violently, and all the Grotto Heaven cultivators retreated a few steps like a receding tide. At this moment, Ji Tao and the other assassins were shocked and couldn't believe it. Even Ji Yusha, who had always been unconvinced by Jiang Tian, was speechless. He took their treasures and forced them to submit. Senior Taichu is really domineering. Ji Dunlan was full of admiration and her body was trembling with excitement. After the end of the Age of Tao damage and the establishment of the Empire of the Ruins of Deity, The cultivators of the Southgate Galaxy had been treating the natives of the deity ground like ants and the lowliest slaves. Even though there was some resistance from the great outlaws and the three assassins, it wasn't a big deal. Most of them ran away after attacking. None of the alien races had ever been as powerful as Jiang Tian, trampling the cultivators of the Southgate under his feet. This is great. This is great. This is what a real man should be like. A soul formation assassin took a sip of wine and exclaimed. He couldn't compare to Jiang Tian's peerless aura, but he yearned for it. Uncle, what should we do? Do we really have to submit to him? What should we do if the Emperor of the Ruins wants to punish us? Perfected cultivator Xuanyu couldn't make up his mind and was in a dilemma. Kong Teichu was indeed terrifying, but the Emperor of the Ruins wasn't easy to deal with either. My friend, don't be unforgiving. The Water Moon Grotto Heaven is indeed no match for you, but we can't offend the Empire of the Ruins of Deity. We can seal our mountain for 1,000 years and stay neutral in the battle between you and the Emperor of the Ruins. Divine Lord Sun Shao smiled bitterly with a pitiful look on his face. That was already a great concession for him. If he stayed neutral, he might be besieged by the armies of the Empire of the Ruins of Deity. That's exactly what I'm going to do. My words are like gold, like jade, like the heavenly order. Do you think I'm kidding? Jiang Tian said coldly. He stomped his foot and the divine plate behind him spun. The ice god forbidden region appeared and controlled him and divine Lord Xuanyu. If you don't surrender, I'll have no choice but to level the Water Moon Grotto Heaven and kill you and your descendants. I'll make your entire sect disappear from the world. Only then can we avenge the ancestors of the deity ground. While speaking, he tapped the sky-swallowing fiend gourd on his waist. Immediately, 10,000 flying swords containing the laws of metal shot out like silver bottles bursting out of water. A cold light flashed and illuminated an area 100-mile radius. A torrent of flying swords appeared in the sky, blocking the sun. They were indestructible and flew in all directions. Those 10,000 flying swords were made by Jiang Tian in the heavenly star Small World. After a few years of nourishment, they already contained Dharma laws and were comparable to Tao artifacts. One of them could kill a nascent soul cultivator, not to mention 10,000 of them. Swish, swish, swish. The frosty flying swords flashed with silver light as they instantly pierced through the defensive spell formations and swept through the area. The disciples of the Water Moon Grotto Heaven, including the Hall Masters, Peak Masters, Elders and disciples of the Seven Heroes, either ran in all directions or tried to resist with Dharma treasures and Dharma outfits. But they were all pierced through by the swords. Blood dyed the sky red and covered the mountains and palaces. Heads rolled and blood flowed like a river. Jiang Tian was truly vile at the moment. The residents of the Water Moon Grotto Heaven, or rather, the entire ruins of deity, were different from Long Xingnan and Ghost Wolf in the second and third level worlds. They were invaders from the Southgate Galaxy. In the ancient times, they had caused a lot of bloodshed and killed countless ancestors of the deity ground. The Sheng Emperor, the Ao Emperor, the Nine-Headed Flood Dragon Emperor, and many other divine generals of the ancient heaven, and all the grievances and blood debts of the righteous warriors were recorded in Jiang Tian's flying sword. Rumble! The flying sword tore through the sky, and its power grew stronger and stronger. In the end, it was like a silver hurricane that carried unbelievable power. Everywhere it passed, mountains collapsed, rocks flew into the air, formations and restrictions were destroyed, and many floating palaces exploded. A half-soul formation elder was lucky enough to survive. He couldn't help but sneak an attack on Jiang Tian when he saw the bloodbath. Jiang Tian immediately slashed with his finger. Kuan Peng Law, Destruction Blade. That slash was like a god of creation splitting the chaos into yin and yang. The world was suddenly split in half. The Dharma artifacts of the half-soul formation elder cracked one after another, and the slash cut through his nascent soul as easily as cutting tofu. Bang! The eyes of the half-soul formation elder dimmed and his powerful nascent soul exploded. Even his body and divine soul turned into a mist of blood. After Jiang Tian killed another 2 elders, Divine Lord Xian Nu struggled crazily in the Forbidden Realm and shouted with blood and tears on his face. Ancestors of the Water Moon Grotto Heaven, are you going to let this fiend massacre our disciples and trample on the dignity of the Water Moon Grotto Heaven? As he shouted, the entire Water Moon Grotto Heaven suddenly shone brightly. Many Dharma laws appeared in the sky, and there were even fragments of the Grand Tao surrendering. A dense aura of slaughter soared into the sky. It was as if numerous dormant primordial tyrannosauruses were awakening, and their imposing auras were shocking. Chapter 1585. Senior Tai Chu, they still have some old living fossils that have condensed their blood and stopped their lifespan. Be careful. Ji Tao said to Chen Fan with his immortal will. There were about 100 soul formation cultivators in the ruins of deities. They were also called soul formation cultivators. But there were more than 10,000 years ago. However, they were about to die, so they were hiding with all kinds of secret arts. There's still some old monsters? Unfortunately, I killed one of the 3 most powerful soul formation cultivators and captured the other 2. Do you really think you can overturn the world? Jiang Tian grunted, and his immortal will suddenly burst out, covering an area of a few hundred miles like a black tide. On a mountain called Ancestral Spirit Mountain, which was more than 10,000 feet tall and had extremely rich spirit qi, many ancestors of the Grotto Heavens woke up one after another. Those ancestors were wearing robes with clouds, waves, and thunderbolts carved on them. Some of them were as ethereal as deities, some were as majestic as emperors, and some were as rotten as ghosts. They were apparently the elders and sect masters of the Water Moon Grotto Heaven. Some of them were even active before the age of the Tao damage and had lived longer. Their energy wasn't much weaker than that of the Purple Lightning Divine Lord. Some of them were even a bit stronger, but they were just struggling to survive. Boom. At that moment, the 8 ancestor-level figures were awakened. They worked together to activate the killing array of the Water Moon Heavenly Abode. They took out all kinds of Tao artifacts, and with endless might and killing intent, they whistled through the sky and attacked Jiang Tian. They're just a bunch of zombies. Xian Nu, is this your last trump card? I'm so disappointed. Jiang Tian smiled and suddenly threw a punch. At this moment, the 3-meter-long divine disk shone brightly again. It was as resplendent as the sun in the sky, illuminating the mountains and rivers. 9 magnificent phantoms appeared and 9 Dharma laws were infused into Jiang Tian's fist, which was surrounded by chaotic qi. Jiang Tian's fist broke the sky and the sun, the moon, and the arrays and restrictions, then he smashed on the ancestral spirit mountain. Clang! At that moment, it was as if Gong Gong had touched Mount Buzhou in anger. The ancestral spirit mountain, which was more than 100,000 feet tall, trembled violently like a miniature bonsai that was hit by a 1,000-pound hammer. Light rays shot out from the mountain, and many protective divine arrays were almost cracked. The ancestors all spat out mouthfuls of blood and were on the verge of collapsing. Again! Jiang Tian wasn't feeling well either. The 30-foot divine disc was actually Jiang Tian's golden core. His punch just now was indeed powerful. However, he had almost burned his golden core. The backlash was extremely terrifying, causing traces of blood to seep out from the corner of his mouth. But Jiang Tian still didn't care, his killing intent raging. The Empire of the Ruins of Immortality was extremely powerful. Right now, he had to break through the heavenly caves one by one and isolate the Empire of the Ruins of Immortality. Otherwise, the heavenly caves would interfere in the final battle. Today, he would finish everything in one fell swoop. Rumble! When Jiang Tian threw the second punch, cracks appeared on the 30-foot divine disc. The formations and restrictions of the ancestral spirit mountain were completely obliterated. Cracks and cracks appeared on the mountain. The weakest ancestral spirit ancestor couldn't hold on any longer and was directly devoured by the killing formation, exploding in the air. Sect Master! Countless disciples of the Water Moon Grotto Heaven cried with tears of blood in their eyes. Let's see how long you can last. When Jiang Tian threw the last punch, the divine disc behind him had completely dimmed and it looked like a giant millstone, which meant that he had infused endless Dharma laws and true essence into that punch. Bang! This time, the entire ancestral spirit mountain couldn't withstand it, and it exploded. Rocks were scattered in the air, and the Dharma power surged. The entire grotto heaven shook violently. The other ancestral patriarchs were knocked back and blood spurted out of their mouths. They were sent flying in all directions amid the dust and Dharma power waves. Poof! Jiang Tian also spurted out blood and cracks appeared on his chest. That was because the Dharma power of the 30-foot divine disc had been used up and it had started to devour the energy of his body. However, Jiang Tian didn't care at all. His hands swiftly formed hand seals, and his gaze was deep as he instantly executed a peerless killing technique. Heaven's severing. Swish. A dull and lusterless ancient sword jumped out of Jiang Tian's nurturing gourd. However, the ancient sword immediately unleashed an overwhelming killing intent, as if it could cut through the universe and destroy the universe. In the end, the terrifying killing intent filled the entire grotto heaven as if a real deity had descended to the mortal world. The mighty sword Qi spread out for 30,000 feet and tore through the sky. It carried boundless killing intent as it slashed towards the old ancestors. Countless cultivators were shocked. The heaven-severing sword? I heard that it's the sword of the former emperor of the Qing dynasty. It once cut through the universe. An old cultivator cried out in horror. He has the legendary heaven-severing sword. Xian Nu's face was filled with fear and desperation. Ah, sect master, you shouldn't have acted so rashly. The last trump card of the grotto heaven is gone. Sun Shao heaved a sigh and closed his eyes. Tears ran down his cheeks as he knew what would happen next. According to the legends, there used to be countless planets between the Southgate Galaxy and the Solar System, between the deity ground and ancient Earth in the ancient times, but Emperor Zhongli had destroyed all of them with that sword. Rumor had it that it was a deity artifact that could cut through the stars and the moon. It was far more powerful than all Dao artifacts and sacred weapons. Even the Emperor of the Ruins had been eyeing it for a long time, but he couldn't get it. At that moment, Jiang Tian was killing people with that sword. Who could stop him? When Jiang Tian's 30 kilometers long sword Qi swept over, all the ancestors were unable to resist it any longer, and they were slashed to the point their limbs flew about while their blood dyed the sky red. Crystalline bones scattered throughout the sky, and it was even to the extent that a few tens of thousands of meters tall mountains in the surroundings were flattened. The Divine Lord Xian Nu couldn't stand it anymore. He knelt in the sky and said with a trembling voice, "Your Majesty, please stop. The grotto heaven surrenders. We're willing to follow you to fight against the tyranny of the Ruins Emperor and break this unfair world. We surrender. We're willing to follow you to the ruins of deity, destroy the empire of deity and rebuild the heavenly courts. We're willing to sign a divine soul contract with your Majesty. From now on we'll be loyal to you." Sir God Sun Shao and the remaining elders, hall masters, and disciples knelt on the ground with endless sorrow and fear. They worshipped and called him His Majesty. He flattened a grotto heaven and made them surrender in a day. Not even Sword God could do that, right? Jiyusha widened her eyes in disbelief, as if she were in a dream. She only felt that day was more exciting than anything she had experienced in her life. Ah, Senior Tai Chu has a powerful helper in today's battle, and another pillar of the empire of deity has fallen. Bai Muxue waved her jade-like hand and walked out of a protective formation that Jiang Tian had casually set up. Her beautiful eyes were filled with admiration as she looked at the young man standing in the sky with a sword in his hand. Besides, Senior Tai Chu will be able to form a supreme nascent soul after getting the Wind Rain flag. I'm afraid the battle with the Empire of Deity won't be far away. That day, the ancestral patriarchs of the Grotto Heaven, which claimed to be an immortal sect, were killed and more than half of its disciples were injured. Jiang Tian had driven them into despair and they had completely surrendered. Jiang Tian was also the first overlord in the history of the Empire of Deity to force a Grotto Heaven to surrender, making history. Not even the ancient sages had done it. Chapter 1586. It's best that you turn over a new leaf. Overlords above the soul formation level, sign a divine soul contract with me. Jiang Tian landed on the square in front of the central palace and said leisurely, "If I conquer the empire of the ruins of immortality in the future, you'll all be meritorious and I'll reward you handsomely." "Yes, your majesty." Xian Nu, divine emperor Sun Shao, and the others looked regretful. They stepped forward and offered a wisp of their divine souls to merge with Jiang Tian's divine soul. They knew that once they signed a divine soul contract with Jiang Tian, they would be under his control from then on. They would be slaves and servants at Jiang Tian's beck and call. Once they violated the contract, Jiang Tian could kill them from 1,000,000 miles away. As for Jiang Tian's reward, to be honest, they didn't care about it at all. The 6 grotto heavens were second only to the ruins Emperor Palace, the 100 Moon Academy, and the Sky Palace. They had countless resources, and Jiang Tian's promise wasn't tempting at all. "I can even take you to the central galaxy and help you reach the void return level or even the way reunion level." Sensing their emotions, Jiang Tian chuckled and said with his immortal will, "Senior, you know about the central galaxy? Have you been there before? Are you really the reincarnation of a legendary grand cultivator from the central galaxy?" Hearing that, Xian Nu, Sun Shao, and the other soul formation cultivators trembled and their faces changed. They couldn't believe it. Only the top figures in the ruins of immortality like them knew about the existence of the central galaxy and how inferior the cultivation heritages in the Southgate Galaxy, the Big Dipper Galaxy, and the entire Milky Way were compared to the central galaxy. In fact, only 3 to 5 people in the Southgate Galaxy had successfully stepped into the central galaxy and sent back information in the past 1,000,000 years. According to the information they had received, the central galaxy was boundless and vast. It was located in the core area of the universe and was a super large group of stars formed by countless star systems and galaxies. That was the core area of the world of cultivators and the essence of the entire universe. The strongest races, the best geniuses, and the most mystical sects and orthodoxies were all gathered there. There were descendants of deities who were as powerful as deities when they were born, sacred bodies and bloodlines that could kill soul formation grand cultivators when they were golden core cultivators, peerless goddesses who were so beautiful that even the ancient saints were attracted to them, and supreme overlords who could destroy planets with one attack. That place took up all the wind currents of the entire universe. Any nascent soul cultivator could master 5 or 6 divine powers, or even more. In comparison, the other planet regions, galaxies, and cultivation planets, including the Big Dipper system, weren't worth mentioning in front of the central galaxy. Regardless of whether it was the sects, the talents, or the cultivation holy lands, they were all far inferior. Not to mention the Southgate Galaxy. As a matter of fact, the entire Milky Way was only a desolate galaxy at the edge of the central galaxy. It was like a grain of rice trying to compete with the sun and the moon. Rumor had it that 300,000 years ago, a soul formation grand cultivator on the Southgate Galaxy went through a lot of hardships and arrived at the central galaxy, joining a sect there. The message he sent back said that there were void return cultivators in his sect every generation. There were even 3 void return grand cultivators in one generation, and soul formation cultivators were like rain. It was extremely prosperous. And yet, that sect wasn't even a top one in the central galaxy, it was only a second or third-rate sect. It wasn't worth mentioning compared to the supreme sacred grounds and celestial sects, which had Tao reunion perfected immortals and tribulation grand cultivators. The celestial sects had truly produced deities who had ascended to the deity realm. Those deities could pick the stars and the moon and live as long as the sky. They wouldn't be afraid even if the universe was destroyed. And yet, there hadn't been a single void return cultivator in the entire history of the Southgate Galaxy for 1,000,000 years, which was too shocking. Nascent soul cultivators didn't want anything in their lives, only to become soul formation cultivators. What about soul formation cultivators? They certainly wanted to reach a higher level and reach the void return level. And yet, the soul formation cultivators of the ruins of deity knew how difficult it was to reach the void return level. It was as difficult as ascending to heaven. The spirit chi and heavenly treasures in that place couldn't support it at all. They had already used the universe chi drawing array to gather the spirit chi from the second and third worlds. Although there wasn't much information about the central galaxy and it was only a few words, it still made them yearn for it. Countless stars formed a magnificent river of stars that stretched across the center of the universe. How beautiful and majestic was that scene! You're right. I'm indeed the reincarnation of a grand cultivator from the central galaxy. Jiang Tian nodded. I see. No wonder you can control so many Dharma laws. You can fight against a soul formation cultivator when you're only a nascent soul cultivator. Sun Shao and Sir God Xian Nu turned pale with fright. They were so excited that their bodies trembled. They looked at Jiang Tian with admiration and respect. In fact, they had thought about it for a long time, but they didn't want to believe it. After all, reincarnation was mysterious and extremely rare. Besides, even if a grand cultivator wanted to take over someone's body, he wouldn't have taken over a human from Earth. Therefore, this conjecture was just a conjecture. But now, this most impossible guess had instead obtained Jiang Tian's personal acknowledgement. So, how could they not be shocked? Seeing how shocked they were, Jiang Tian wanted to laugh. If he told them that he had once been invincible in the deity realm and had even reached the level of Hong Meng, they would probably be so scared that they couldn't even stand straight. I've also heard that someone from the Southgate Galaxy once set foot in the Central Galaxy. How did they get there? Did they use Universe Dharma artifacts or crack the dimension? Jiang Tian asked with confusion. Well, we don't know either. Entering the Central Galaxy has always been the privilege of the royal family. We're just grotto heavens after all. Sun Shao revealed a bitter expression, shook his head, and sighed. The other divine lords also had ugly looks on their faces. They were either disheartened or angry. They were already at the top of that world, but that was the only thing that made them unhappy. No matter how powerful a soul formation cultivator was, he could only live for a few thousand years. If his cultivation arts or physique weren't right, he could only live for 1,000 years. He couldn't set foot in the Central Galaxy and was still confined to that world, so he didn't have the chance to live forever. It's fine. Everything will be clear after I kill the Ruins Emperor and take over his palace. I'll take you to the Central Galaxy. Jiang Tian smiled and said, Great. His Majesty, you're broad-minded and talented. You're not someone the Ruins Emperor can compare to. The Wind Rain flag belongs to the ancient heavenly courts, so it should belong to Senior Tai Chu. We're willing to do so. The deity ground also belonged to the solar system. As a citizen of the Southgate Galaxy, I've always been sad about the invasion back then. This time, Xian Nu, Sun Shao and the others all knelt down and admired Jiang Tian. They looked surprised. After chatting for a while, the situation quickly changed. Jiang Tian turned from a fiend and an invader to a savior and a righteous man, the only hope to lead them into the Central Galaxy. After Jiang Tian signed a divine soul contract with them, Ji Tao led the old assassins to the square and knelt down. The assassin dynasty in the human world is willing to follow His Majesty, Tai Chu. We'll fight in the ruins of deity and help the world. Chapter 1587. Ji Yusha's face was full of shame. She was too embarrassed to meet Jiang Tian's gaze. There was nothing much to say. If Jiang Tian had not taken action, they would have been wiped out by the Aquamoon Heavenly Abode. Now, even the Aquamoon Heavenly Abode had submitted to Jiang Tian, which made them realize how powerful Jiang Tian was. Even if they took a step back, they had lost to Jiang Tian in the assassination competition. They had to accept their loss and submit to him. If they did not submit, Jiang Tian and the 7 great bandits were not incompetent. If they fought, how could they be a match for them? Thus, we originally belonged to the same lineage and were connected by blood. We all bear a deep grudge and have a common enemy. Jiang Tian's face was full of joy. He helped Ji Tao and the others up and said leisurely, Now, we should band together and exert our strength in one place to wash away the humiliation of 10,000 years and seek justice. Let them pay with their blood. Your Majesty, what you said makes sense. I was too narrow-minded. Ji Tao's face was full of shame. When Jiang Tian proposed to take the human world as his subordinate, he was full of resistance. At the end of the day, he was only considering that his power had been damaged and that the cultivation resources that his ancestors had accumulated over thousands of years had been taken by Jiang Tian. But in fact, why would Jiang Tian care about such trivial matters? His goal was to slay the Ruins Emperor and restore the world to its former glory. He wanted to seek justice for himself. Jiang Tian discussed with them for a while more before he got up and left. He turned into a white rainbow that pierced through the sky and left the Aquamoon heavenly abode with Bai Mushua. Jiang Tian used the Kunpeng law to break through space and hide his tracks. He swept across the vast continent of the ruins of immortality as fast as lightning. Within a day, the entire ruins of immortality had been turned upside down. In the sky, cultivators flew on their swords and crystal ships cruised in the sky. However, Jiang Tian's heaven-deceiving mystic technique was too overbearing. It was daunting but not dangerous. No one noticed. Finally, Jiang Tian landed in a small city hundreds of thousands of miles away from the Aquamoon heavenly abode and stepped into a restaurant. It was a secret base of the 7 great bandit families. Jiang Tian had agreed with them to meet there after the operation. There are actually people who want this golden underwear. Someone even anonymously offered a price of 1 billion crystals. Ying Long's face was unscrupulous as he played with the underwear. He laughed and said, "It's so popular. Should we go steal a few more?" Niu Duotian was squatting on a chair. Sitting opposite him was Tian Shu, who looked like a rat. He was sipping the Thunderfire wine and smoking his pipe. He shook his head and sighed. I planted tens of thousands of acres of spirit grains in the ruins of the Ruins Emperor's palace. I'm just afraid that the Ruins Emperor's good-for-nothings will squander them. That's right. They just don't know what's good for them. Tian Shu had too much to drink and was extremely daring. He shook his head and said anxiously, "How dare they? If they dare destroy my brother Nyo's spirit grain fields, I dare destroy their Ruins Emperor's palace. Fuck, what the hell are they?" Their operation had ended and they had reaped a bountiful harvest. They were drinking and chatting in satisfaction. "Your Majesty, did you succeed?" Fu Heishui was hanging upside down on a beam. When he saw Jiang Tian enter, he landed with a whoosh and cupped his fists as he asked respectfully, "Your Majesty is injured? How's the situation?" The moment that was said, everyone looked at Jiang Tian with expectant looks. They all came over to greet him. The battle at the Aquamoon heavenly abode was blocked by the world membrane and various isolation restrictions. They did not know the true situation of the battle. However, the wind rain banner was just too important. It was very likely Jiang Tian's only hope of condensing a water elemental nomological seal. It was also the final step for Jiang Tian to step into the nascent soul realm. If they failed to obtain it this time, who knew how long they would have to wait to find a suitable cultivation resource again? Jiang Tian was indeed a little weak at that moment. Destroying Ancestral Spirit Mountain had drained him greatly. "My luck isn't bad. I got it," Jiang Tian said with a smile. The moment that was said, there was a jubilant cheer. "Congratulations, Your Majesty. Congratulations. You can finally step into the nascent soul realm." Yi Chun congratulated respectfully. "It's the supreme nascent soul realm." Ying Long corrected him seriously. Long Shengnan also revealed a look of anticipation. She was so excited that tears welled up in her eyes. She knew that the day of her father's revenge was not far off. "Ha, but we didn't work for nothing." Ghost Wolf was overjoyed as well. After spending so much time with the 7 great bandits, he seemed to have found a warm family again. His gloomy temperament had lessened a lot. Niu Duotian drank like crazy and shouted happily. Tu Fei laughed so loudly that the roof shook. Even the cold Yun Zhongzi revealed a look of joy. Fu Heishui and Fu Heishui were so excited that they hugged their heads and cried. "If His Majesty Tai Chu brings us to the central galaxy, we will be able to find wives. We won't have to end our bloodline. If our mothers knew, they would be so happy. They would be so happy that they would jump out of their graves. They would spread their wings and soar. Bai Muxue looked at Jiang Tian and said, "Not only did you get the Wind Rain banner, but you also killed the Purple Lightning Lord." The Purple Lightning Lord was at least in the top 50 on the list of the immortal ruins. However, he was killed by His Majesty with one strike. This is enough to shock the entire immortal ruins. Awesome. If the human world joins forces with us, His Majesty Tai Chu will have another powerful helper. Great. His Majesty Tai Chu's combat power is unparalleled. It is really unbelievable. After she explained the situation of the battle, everyone looked at Jiang Tian with great respect and shock, admiring him so much that they wanted to prostrate themselves before him. They were not trying to flatter him, but they truly admired him. Such a powerful battle record was enough to make one look down on the world. It's also because of your cooperation. Jiang Tian smiled and said, "This is the art of war. Unite the majority and isolate the most important enemy." After Jiang Tian learned about their operation, he was also very satisfied. Then he said seriously, "The Wind Rain banner is a quasi-deity material, heavenly one water. It can help me form my nascent soul. I have to cultivate in seclusion as soon as possible." "Your Majesty, have you thought about where to cultivate in seclusion?" The Green Dragon King cupped his fists and said sincerely, "Let's go to the immortal ruins. I can cultivate in seclusion at the Dragon Palace in the fallen deity sea. There are 100,000 dragons stationed there. For thousands of years, they have built countless arrays and restrictions. The fortress is very tight and can definitely stop them." "Yes, we are all willing to protect you, Your Majesty. They won't be able to break through. I guarantee they won't be able to return." Tu Fei, the Fu brothers, and Niu Duotian were all eager to fight. "No, I'll go to the world of Zhenyuan," Jiang Tian said leisurely. "When I'm cultivating in seclusion, I can't do anything. You will also be restrained by me and can't go all out. Why should we be passive? This is not in line with my thinking. The best defense is offense. While I'm cultivating in seclusion, you have to continue to execute the decapitation and sabotage operations. Create an illusion that I'm here in the ruins of immortality and make them unable to take care of themselves." "My lord, you're right." Everyone nodded. "But before I leave, I have to kill at least one of Ban Shan and Black White." Jiang Tian's eyes flashed coldly. He said in a low voice, "Have you found out the location of these two people?" Ban Shan and Black White are both in the academy. Even their direct disciples have entered the academy. Yun Zhongzi raised his eyebrows and said, "The academy has many powerful disciples. The academy is also known as the source of the world's cultivation. There are a few soul formation cultivators in the academy and more disciples than in the Aquamoon Grotto heaven. I'm afraid it won't be that easy to kill them." Everyone had a grave expression on their faces. It would be even more dangerous if they had to fight the academy. The academy was one of the 3 most powerful figures in the ruins of immortality, second only to the old ruins emperor. He was many times more powerful than the Purple Lightning Divine Lord. Jiang Tian snorted and said with a smile, "Even if 100 soul formation cultivators gather, we can at least escape unscathed. Why don't we go all out?" Chapter 1588. "No, Master, please listen to me. This is not a good idea. His Majesty has just been through a great battle and he has consumed a lot of energy. Let me handle this." The Green Dragon King knelt on the ground and said earnestly, "Yes, Master. Let us handle this. If we don't kill those two, we will bring our heads back to you." Tu Fei also knelt down and looked emotional. "Master, they're just 2 chancellors of the academy. We have to avenge them, but you don't have to do it yourself." The overlords and even the ghost wolves knelt down. Bai Muxue and Long Shengnan were crying. They didn't want Jiang Tian to take the risk. Jiang Tian was the only hope to overthrow the empire of the ruins of deity. They couldn't let anything happen to him. Jiang Tian should enter the nascent soul level first. With his divine powers, he would be invincible in the ruins of deity. "All right." Jiang Tian thought for a while and nodded. "Then I'll leave it to you. But be careful. My request is still 0 casualties." Understood. Only then did everyone's expressions relax. Then, Jiang Tian told them about the battle plan. In the end, the Green Dragon King took out a gate of sky and adjusted the coordinates to planet Zhu. When His Majesty returns, he will be a nascent soul cultivator. He will be able to fight with soul formation overlords when he reaches the nascent soul level. Once he forms a nascent soul, he won't be afraid of any soul formation overlords. Under everyone's expectant gaze, Jiang Tian stepped into the gate of sky and activated the dimension teleport array. He disappeared on the spot. Then, the 7 overlord families continued to carry out their plan to wreak havoc in the ruins of deity. They even used the creation mysterious art to change their appearances and imitate their auras, disguising themselves as Jiang Tian and attacking everywhere. In the end, even the mortal world's assassin dynasty joined in. In the ruins of immortality, explosions, assassinations, kidnappings, and fierce battles occurred every day in all the major cities, grotto heavens, sects, aristocratic families, and even the imperial capital. In 3 days, 2 soul formation cultivators and a half-soul formation cultivator were killed. Several members of the royal family were stabbed and tied up. More importantly, the dead half-step soul formation cultivator was one of Ban Shan's brothers. The news spread like a hurricane, shocking everyone. I heard that the Fu brothers kidnapped Ban Shan's brothers in order to lure Ban Shan out. But Ban Shan learned his lesson from the sword servant Tong Yujian's death and hid in the academy, refusing to come out. The Tianmong Sky Grotto's sect master asked with a strange expression after he heard some news. This is the first time since the ancient times. Even the dignified academy has become a coward. I can't believe it. When one of the patriarchs of the aristocratic families heard this, his face became very solemn, and sorrow welled up in his heart. This was a huge change that had never happened before in the history of the ruins of immortality. The great bandits were ruthless and ruthless, wreaking havoc. They were like furious dragons dancing in the sky, devils devouring everything. Assassins moved about everywhere, appearing and disappearing like ghosts. When they joined forces, they were like an enormous shadow that enveloped the entire ruins of immortality, making everyone's hearts tremble in fear. It can't be helped, because even if Ban Shan makes a move and has a chance of winning, he won't be able to kill them. They have the gate of heaven influence. The sect leader of the Tianji Grotto shook his head and sighed helplessly. Many people wrung their hands helplessly when they heard this. The gate of heaven influence was a treasure left behind by the ancient heavenly court of the previous dynasty. It was originally held by the divine general of heaven and earth, and it could freely travel through the major stars of the ruins of immortality. Unless the spatial barrier was changed, there was no way to stop them. Faced with this situation, Divine Emperor Lai Hua, who was in charge of investigating Jiang Tian and the Great Bandits, was abnormally furious and flustered. Kong Teichu and the 7 Great Bandits are just a bunch of clowns who are about to die. They can't even withstand a single blow. If you are an expert, then fight me face to face. His bold words spread throughout the ruins of immortality, and many people's expressions changed when they heard it. This was an outstanding ancient emperor, even older than Divine Emperor Hanshi. Moreover, he had been guided by Sword God Teacher and the others. He was powerful and had once been unparalleled. It's not the time for the decisive battle yet. Let's get rid of your henchmen first. But you don't have to worry. Within 3 months, His Majesty Grand Primordium will definitely behead you, a fake emperor. And your ancestor, the Old Ruins Emperor. 100 Moon Academy, Sky Palace, and Ruins Emperor Palace will all be destroyed in 3 months. It's best for the 6 Grotto Heavens to watch from the sidelines. If you dare to participate, you will be killed without a doubt. After the assassination attempt, the 7 Great Bandits did not leave immediately. Instead, they released a message and shouted across space. After the news spread, even Sword God Teacher was alarmed and could not remain calm. This was an unprecedented provocation. Too arrogant. Kong Teichu and the 7 Great Bandits are too troublesome. They actually want to destroy the Academy, Ruins Emperor Palace, and Sky Palace. But are the 3 great giants useless? Who gave them the courage? Many people thought that they were crazy and were too arrogant and despotic. Indeed, the great bandits and peerless assassins had some achievements. But they had only killed a few soul formation cultivators. If he wanted to have a decisive battle with an incomparable giant, he was far from being able to do so. Arrogant. This time, I will personally lead the army and sweep the area. You will pay the price for your previous disrespect and provocation in blood. The Inferno godly emperor was furious. He led the 9 guards to attack and search for clues. They destroyed the strongholds of the 7 great bandits and counterattacked crazily. While the ruins of immortality was in an uproar, Jiang Tian had already arrived at planet Xiyuan and began the most critical seclusion breakthrough. Planet Xiyuan was still desolate. There was no vegetation or life. The starry sky was dim, and it looked extremely barren and cold. Under the pitch-black night sky, Jiang Tian sat in a ring-shaped mountain with a calm expression. This place was quite a distance away from the 7 great bandits' base. The commotion caused by the breakthrough was too great, and they might be affected. I should first use the myriad origin cauldron to condense the thick earth law into a true seal. Raindragon's golden core will form a nascent soul. Jiang Tian stroked his chin and considered the details of his cultivation. The myriad origin cauldron was a divine material to begin with. It contained the aura of chaos and could even open up a world in the void, creating all things and nurturing a world of life. So, Jiang Tian didn't have to worry about earth elemental materials at all. He couldn't find any before. Then, I'll absorb the Tai water, a quasi-deity material, and form the true seal of the mystic water law. Then, I'll form the azure dragon golden core and form the nascent soul. Jiang Tian took out the one-day water wind rain banner and revealed a gratified expression. The wind and rain banner was sparkling and translucent, exuding an incomparably dense aura of water spirit. It was clearly a liquid material, but it appeared to be solid. It was flowing with light and vibrant colors, magnificent and moving. Finally, the most critical step is to combine the 9 Dharma laws, the 9 divine bodies and the 9 nascent souls to create the supreme 9-orifice chaotic divine nascent soul. Jiang Tian looked expectant. Even though he had cultivated for 10,000 years and lived 2 lives, he still couldn't calm down. The 9-orifice chaotic divine nascent soul was too powerful. It surpassed all the deity children and was equivalent to the child of the god of creation. In his previous life, Jiang Tian's nascent soul was only a sacred grade nascent soul. It wasn't even a deity child. However, he had fought everywhere and learned all kinds of arts. Later, when he reached the void returning, Dao reunion and tribulation level, he found out what he missed and fixed his foundation. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to achieve so much. A 9-orifice chaotic divine nascent soul was extremely rare in the realm of cultivation and the deity realm, not to mention the central galaxy, because it belonged to the divine realm. It could be said that once the divine nascent soul was formed, it would be equivalent to the child of the god of creation. It would be able to kill all the soul formation cultivators. Even the nascent soul and soul formation cultivators of the deity children would have a slim chance of winning against it. And Jiang Tian, ever since he entered the golden core level, had been searching for cultivation resources everywhere and fighting all for this moment. How could Jiang Tian calm down? Let's not think too much. Let's start cultivating. Jiang Tian looked serious. The first thing he took out was the time array disc. Swish. The time array disc spun and flew to the top of Jiang Tian's head. It suddenly expanded to 10 feet wide. Suddenly, thousands of rays of light shone like the sun in the sky, illuminating an area of 10 miles. This time, Jiang Tian filled the array disc with countless priceless supreme-grade crystals to maintain 100 times faster time flow. Chapter 1589. On the barren planet Xian, Jiang Tian sat alone in a lonely ring-shaped mountain. His 5 fingers were facing the sky, and his face was very calm. He had never been so calm since he was reborn. He only thought about cultivation and breaking through. Everything else had nothing to do with him. Swish! Behind Jiang Tian, A 30-foot divine disk opened and a 1,000-foot earth dragon jumped out with the chaotic source cauldron in its hand. Refine. Jiang Tian frowned and activated the transcending divine 9 transformation art. At the same time, the Taotai unity law was activated as well, and it transformed into a black Taotai that cut and grinded the primal chaos source cauldron into the thick aura of earth, and it slowly absorbed and refined it. The chaotic source cauldron was vast and mighty. It gave people a feeling that it was inexhaustible. It also let out a bright light and many Dharma laws hung down like silk ribbons. Fragments of the Grand Tao floated in the air. Those Dharma laws and Grand Taos were related to the thick earth and carried chaotic chi. One of them could kill a supreme nascent soul cultivator. The chaotic source cauldron is indeed a supreme divine material. I'm afraid that helping my Dharma laws to form the true seal and Ing Dragon's golden core to form the nascent soul will only consume a little of it. Jiang Tian exclaimed in his mind. This cauldron was said to be used by Emperor Xing Li of the ancient heavenly court. It fell into the small world of Thunderlock by accident and was obtained by Jiang Tian. It was shocking and had endless magical uses. If it fell into the hands of a soul formation overlord, it could create a grotto heaven. If it was obtained by a deity emperor, it could create a great world in the galaxy. If it was created by Hong Meng, it could even create a universe. Once this cauldron was born, it would be earth-shattering and earth-shattering. Not to mention the ruins of deity and the multidimensional worlds, even the imperishable sects and sacred grounds in the center of the universe would be tempted and fight for it. As Jiang Tian refined it, more and more thick earth chi poured into Jiang Tian's divine disk and the divine body of the winged dragon. It was like a raging river. As for the primal chaos source cauldron, only a piece the size of a soybean had been consumed. After all, it was a world-shocking divine material. The thick earth energy was extremely pure and heavy, almost like true essence. There weren't many impurities, so Jiang Tian refined it very quickly. It was only 3 earth days. Even if he took into account the acceleration effect of the time array disk, Jiang Tian still spent about 10 days. Inside Jiang Tian's 3 zhanglong divine disk, the rotating galaxy that represented the law of earth suddenly bloomed with a dazzling light. Qi soared into the sky, and the tight boundary shook violently. The stars became even more distorted and dim, as if the space barrier was about to be torn apart. At the same time, a vast and surging true essence fluctuation spread out in the form of a dark yellow ring. It was like a tempestuous wave or a hurricane had passed through and swept out in all directions. The entire 3 kilometers tall ring-shaped mountain trembled violently for a while before it collapsed with a rumble. Heavens, has my lord successfully stepped into the nascent soul stage? How could the fluctuations be so powerful? The aura was so earth-shattering that even the ring-shaped mountain was destroyed. It's carved with ancient patterns. Not even soul formation cultivators can move it. On a mountain outside, Ying Long's father, Ying Shan, the family master of the Ying family, was dumbfounded and his eyes almost popped out. At this moment, in the face of the overflowing pressure, he felt a sense of suffocation. He was suppressed to the point that he could not breathe. He was a soul formation cultivator after all, but he had never seen such a terrifying breakthrough of the nascent soul level. It was earth-shattering. The few nascent soul stage bandits around were even forced to kneel on the ground by Jiang Tian's overwhelming aura and almost spurted out blood. Then, he understood why Jiang Tian was going to break through at a place far away from the base of the great bandits. Such power was enough to level the base. No. He's just a golden core cultivator and a nascent soul cultivator. He hasn't reached the supreme nascent soul stage yet. Next to him, Yi Gongming turned into a skinny old man with an ugly face. His face was full of shock and the corners of his eyes were trembling. They didn't dare to disturb Jiang Tian's cultivation, but they had been watching from afar, afraid that something would happen to Jiang Tian during the breakthrough. What? This isn't the final nascent soul level? It's just one of the steps? Ying Shan was dumbfounded. He couldn't imagine just how terrifying it would be when Jiang Tianing forms her nascent soul. Would it shatter the entire world? Ying Long's divine body transcends, the law of thick earth becomes a true seal. Long Xinghe forms a nascent soul with his golden core. Jiang Tian's eyes revealed a hint of joy. He took a deep breath and looked at the myriad stone cauldron. This primal chaos source cauldron is really powerful. It only used the size of a soybean to support my breakthrough. Every time Jiang Tian formed a nascent soul and formed a true law seal, it was equivalent to a cultivator crossing 7 or 8 levels from the golden core realm to the nascent soul stage. The amount of cultivation resources and world spiritual qi consumed was huge. Therefore, every time Jiang Tian broke through, he would use extremely high-level heavenly treasures or even quasi-immortal materials. Otherwise, he would use tens of thousands of golden cores and dozens of nascent soul cultivators' qi and blood to devour. But this time, he only used a little bit of the myriad stone cauldron. One could see how extraordinary it was. Next, it's time for the wind and rain flag. Jiang Tian sat cross-legged on a cold meteorite-like mountain rock. He patted the sky-devouring demonic gourd on his waist and brought out the wind and rain flag. This flag wasn't big. It was only 1 qi wide and was triangular in shape. Even the flag and the flagpole were sparkling and translucent like mercury. It looked magnificent and moving. The water essence within flowed slowly, emitting a rumbling sound like that of a great river. It shook the surrounding 50 kilometers like thunder. It shocked Yi Gongming and Yingshan who were far away. Upon closer inspection, one could see that countless hurricanes were blooming like flowers within the wind and rain flag. The trickles were actually hurricanes and tsunamis. There were also sounds of thunder. Streams of wind and rain, rivers, thunder laws and great Tao fragments lingered, intertwined and floated within the flag. They even spread out in the void as if they were created by the laws of heaven and earth. Yi Gongming sighed. This is the supreme treasure of the ancient heavenly court. Back then, it was controlled by a supreme deity. He was a heavenly master and could control the clouds and rain, bringing blessings to the world. His eyes were filled with hot tears. He felt gratified. This ancient supreme treasure belonged to the ancient heavenly court. But it was seized by the cultivators of the South Gate and became the supreme treasure of the Water Moon Eden. And now, it was finally taken back by Jiang Tian. Pinnacle Life Water, water-type quasi-immortal materials. A drop can transform into a vast ocean and a strand into a great river. Jiang Tian looked at the wind and rain flag in his hand. His eyes were deep and there was a hint of emotion in them. His face gradually became firm. The reason why I was able to reach this level in less than 10 years in this life, be it with the myriad stone cauldron, the pearl tree and the wind and rain flag in my hand, is because of the blessings left behind by the sages of the ancient heavenly court. This time, if I can successfully form the 9-orifice chaotic divine infant, I'll definitely help the predecessors fulfill their last wishes. I'll kill the ruins emperor, wipe out the fake dynasty in the ruins of deity, restore the land and firmly guard the 2 worlds of earth and the ruins of deity. Then, Jiang Tian slowly used the Transcending 9 transformation art and the law of Tao Tai to absorb the pinnacle life water in the wind and rain flag. The Xianshui Azure Dragon was one of the most powerful divine bodies. Jiang Tian had used the primeval water of world in the misty heart water lotus to form it in Star World. The misty heart water lotus was a rare species from the beginning of the world. Although it was very precious, it wasn't as powerful as the myriad stone cauldron or the Dinghai pearl, so the divine body wasn't stable. For many years, Jiang Tian had been using the Transcending 9 transformation art to convert his other true essence into water true essence to barely maintain the divine body. But then, wisps of pinnacle life water qi were injected into the Xianshui Azure Dragon behind Jiang Tian. The Azure Dragon's body became translucent and radiant, as if it was an exquisite and sparkling green jade statue. From the inside to the outside, all its bones, veins and organs were dazzling, letting out countless rays of golden light and divine light. Roar! The Azure Dragon divine body let out a joyful roar. The mystic water dharma law became more and more solid and started to move towards the true seal. From the outside, It looked like the scattered galaxy in the divine plate was gradually solidifying and the stars were inlaid together like rivets. Time flew like water. Planet Xion was a dimensional world formed by folded dimensions, so it couldn't revolve around the South Gate star. It was an evernight world with endless darkness. But judging by the constant decay time of the Dharma artifact, it should be 10 days later. The wind and rain banner floating in front of Jiang Tian shattered with a pa the sound and turned into azure smoke drifting into the air. All the peak life water had already been absorbed and refined. At the same time, the Xianshui azure dragon changed and turned into a 1,000-foot dragon with a human body. The mystic water Dharma law surged around it, as if it could reach 100,000 miles away and nourish the world. It had both offensive and defensive abilities, and its energy was extremely dense. It had already reached a transcendent state. The Dharma laws in the divine plate were extremely condensed and the true seal let out beams of light. The corresponding golden core had formed the nascent soul. Great! The Xianshui azure dragon's golden core has also formed the nascent soul. Jiang Tianzong let out a long laugh. His eyes shone with a strange light. He was indescribably delighted. The next step is to form a fetus with the divine plate, the 9 nines return to origin, the ultimate creation, the chaotic divine body, and the 9 orifice chaotic divine infant. Jiang Tian's eyes became serious and he said coldly, "That's the real power to suppress everything." The next moment, he activated the last chapter of the Transcendent 9 transformation art, the Return to One chapter, without saying anything else. The god bodies jumped into the 10-meter-long divine plate behind them, turning into phantoms. The 10-meter-long divine plate slowly rolled inwards, emitting cracking noises. During this process, quintessential essence and laws were constantly dispersing, causing Tao patterns to be obliterated. Countless talisman arrays were blooming with resplendent radiance. The ground within 100 miles was cracked, and the ring-shaped mountains were razed to the ground. In the end, the divine plate gradually merged into an irregular sphere like a package. What's this? His Majesty Absolute Beginning's divine plate is so condensed and tough, yet it's become like this? Ying Shan was astonished. The irregular sphere formed by the divine plate looked like a huge broad beam from the outside. Countless veins that looked like blood vessels and nerves appeared on it, and it let out an incomparably bright, auspicious light. It looked very strange and even a little frightening. This is a spirit embryo. A spirit embryo that can nurture a supreme nascent soul. Yi Gongming muttered as he stared at the floating broad beam. He suddenly understood in his heart. Chapter 1590. The Dantian nourished the golden core, the spirit embryo nurtured the nascent soul, and the divine treasures strengthened the gods. But in the real cultivation world, there weren't only one round golden core. There were all kinds of them. The golden core that Jiang Tian condensed at the bottom of the Tunguska demon lake with the help of star destruction and the immortal pregnant placenta was in the shape of a disc. Looking down from the front, it looked like a galaxy formed by 9 rotating galaxies. This 10-meter disc was both the golden core and the Dantian. To be exact, the disc was the Dantian and the 9 galaxies were 9 kinds of golden cores. The divine body, true essence and laws were all inside. At that moment, the disc evolved under the Transcendental 9 transformation art and turned into a supreme spirit embryo. When the spirit embryo was completely closed, it let out an extremely bright light like the sun in the sky, illuminating the entire world of Zhiyuan. At that moment, Yi Gongming, Ying Shan and the other cultivators felt a sharp pain in their eyes. Many of them cried blood even when they closed their eyes. Senior Tai Chu reminded us not to look at him with our naked eyes or even our divine consciousness when he's breaking through. We thought he was being polite. Who would have thought it would be so powerful? Yi Gongming yelled in his mind. He immediately asked the other cultivators to retreat to the array of the base, leaving him and Ying Shan far away. Fortunately, the light of the disc gradually dimmed after the spirit embryo was formed. At least, it wasn't as bright as before. The 2 soul formation cultivators could finally observe it. They saw the 9 divine bodies of the Kuan Pang, the vermilion bird, the thunder python, the azure dragon and the winged dragon gradually appearing in the translucent spirit embryo. Jiang Tian had been using the Transcendental 9 transformation art to condense the 9 divine bodies ever since he reached the foundation establishment level. The lowest level of the 9 divine bodies was at the deity level. After reaching the golden core level, each divine body controlled a law. But this time, Jiang Tian wanted to condense them into the highest law, the law of chaos, to form the chaotic divine body and the 9-orifice chaotic divine infant. Even I didn't dare to look at the law of chaos in my previous life. I've achieved it today. Jiang Tian sighed, his eyes filled with hope. In his previous life, he had mainly cultivated the law of gung metal. When he had reached the nascent soul stage, he had formed a saint-grade nascent soul. Later on, he switched to cultivating the battle immortal art, but he could only control immortal grade laws. In the end, when he reached the deity realm, it was only because his immortal grade laws were stronger that he was able to move unhindered. He did not focus on cultivating divine grade laws. He had 10,000 years worth of memories in this life, and he seemed to be blessed by luck. In 10 years, he had collected a lot of deity materials and divine materials and was about to enter the nascent soul level, a divine grade one. In the world of the ruins of immortality, the outstanding nascent soul cultivators could control Dharma laws. Some talented people in the central galaxy could even master a few types of law divine powers. However, compared to a divine grade law, it was not even worth mentioning. Divine grade laws of nature were also known as divine rules and divine decrees. Like the heavens themselves, they were incomparably powerful. It far surpassed the celestial laws and sage laws, not to mention ordinary laws. For example, the essence chi of the foundation establishment cultivators and the golden core cultivators were as weak as cotton, while the nascent soul cultivators' laws were condensed, extracted, and mixed together to form ropes, which were certainly more powerful than those of the overlords. However, ordinary laws were like rough straw ropes. Celestial and saint-grade laws were like carbon steel cables, but divine-grade laws were like nanotechnology ropes, which were extremely tough and condensed. Although the nanotechnology ropes were only as thick as a strand of hair, they could still lift 10,000 tons of objects. They could even cut straw ropes easily. So, it was the same for divine-grade laws. Even a tiny bit of them could defeat ordinary laws that were 10 times or even 100 times stronger. That was the level and grade of the laws. For example, if 2 cultivators controlled fire elemental laws at the same time, if one of them was a divine law, celestial law, or sage law, and the other was a normal one, the other wouldn't even be able to use a bit of fire elemental essence chi in front of the other. Because the laws that the other cultivators comprehended were much more profound than the other cultivators, the power they controlled would certainly be much more powerful. In the central galaxy, there were some deities from the deity realm in heaven who could easily defeat soul formation cultivators even though they only had the power of a nascent soul cultivator. Normal sacred princes and nascent soul cultivators were only a bit weaker. They could only ensure that they were evenly matched when facing a normal soul formation cultivator. However, I'm different from the entities or the children of entities who were born in the world. Their bloodline talents are there. The golden core formation is naturally a divine grade golden core and the nascent soul cultivator is a divine soul cultivator. Everything happens naturally. But I have to rely on my power. If I want to form a supreme divine law, I have to use external forces to combine the 9 Dharma laws into one. That's the only way I have a chance. Jiang Tian's eyes were focused, and his face was slightly serious. Of course, there were risks. Even the Transcendent 9 Transformations technique was created by an immortal emperor-level sage who spent hundreds of years to create the miraculous chaotic physique. The cultivator who created that art was a rare genius, but it still had a lot of flaws. Besides, it was extremely difficult to control. A millimeter mistake could lead to 1,000 miles difference. For billions of years, many geniuses in the world of cultivation tried to cultivate that art, but they all ended up harming themselves. In his previous life, Jiang Tian had spent hundreds of years fixing that art after he obtained it. Later, he invited immortal Emperor Renming and a dozen other deity emperors to help him. Otherwise, he still wouldn't have been able to cultivate that art. Even so, there was still a risk of dying. After all, that art could only form a chaotic divine infant in theory, but nobody had ever succeeded in doing so in practice. However, once the chaotic divine infant was born and the divine-grade Dharma laws were formed, the benefits would be great. The chaotic divine infant was basically the seed of a god of creation. Its target was the god of creation in Hongmeng. Once it was formed, it would lay the foundation for all eternity. All that was left was to collect resources and continue to increase its level. The chaotic matter could create thousands of Dharma laws and create worlds. The children of entities in the divine realm or the entities born in the world would form a small world in their bodies when they cultivated to a certain level, then a small universe that completely belonged to them. They would be extremely powerful, as if they had created the world. Think about it. Even a soul formation grand cultivator could only control a planet, or better yet, the fragments of the Dharma laws in a galaxy. When the chaotic divine infant reached the tribulation stage in the future, a world would be born in its body. The power of the world and the 3,000 Dharma laws would be nurtured within it. What could be more powerful and vast than the power of a world? Moreover, the Dharma laws in the nascent soul, soul formation, void return, and Tao reunion realms would also be created from the chaotic divine law. For example, Jiang Tian had created the chaotic Dharma laws by combining 9 types of Dharma laws. It was like nuclear fusion, reaching the limit and becoming extremely powerful. However, the original 9 types of Dharma laws wouldn't disappear. Instead, they would nourish each other and become even more powerful. They would expand rapidly like nuclear fission during an attack. They were even more powerful than the true seal of the Dharma laws, directly reaching the threshold of a divine law. I don't care. Even if there's only a glimmer of hope, it's worth a try. At most, I'll give up on the golden core and start from scratch. Jiang Tian gritted his teeth. Like a crazy gambler, he made up his mind and decided to give it his all. He had already stored the creation substance he had obtained from the ancient demon Abyss Golden Crow Ancient Emperor, as well as the bloodline seed and the soul devourer divine consciousness that contained all his memories. He had given them to Yi Gongming to prepare for future troubles. The creation substance was also known as the ever-changing substance. In short, this substance had no attributes at all. Its appearance wasn't fixed either, and it was ever-changing. Using the original body's bloodline seed, or even a divine soul seed, it could change and reproduce life and possess the original body's various powers and divine powers. In other words, even if Jiang Tian died in the process of forming the chaotic divine infant, there was still a chance for him to create a clone. It was like taking over someone else's body and being reborn. However, his cultivation would be 0, and he would be like a mortal who had to start from scratch. It could be said that Jiang Tian was determined to reach the peak even if he had to die. Even if there was a bottomless demon abyss in front of him, he wouldn't back down. Rumble. When he truly activated his spirit embryo, 9 types of terrifying power of laws rumbled around Jiang Tian's body. Inside and outside the spirit embryo, there was a long river formed by mystic water, a huge fireball formed by the vermilion bird true fire, and vines that were full of vitality. The powers that represented 9 different nomological powers appeared. Every one of them was supreme and powerful. They either suppressed the spirit embryo crazily from the outside, or pulled the spirit embryo from the inside by the tendons and muscles, causing it to shrink continuously. They were trying to crush the 9 golden cores in the nascent soul stage, merge them, and sublimate them to the limit to form the strongest chaotic divine infant. Chapter 1591. Boom! Under the suppression of the 9 laws, the spirit embryo was compressed to the extreme. The 9 golden cores of the nascent souls first clashed with each other, emitting thousands of rays of colorful light that shot into the sky and clashed violently within the spirit embryo. Even the 9 divine bodies clashed and fought with each other forcefully. Those golden cores and divine bodies were all extremely powerful, and there were traces of light of different colors appearing. Those lights were as bright as diamonds and as rare as gold crystals. They were extremely rare, like some kind of condensed crystal. Those were the laws, the condensation of essence chi, and the highest level of power. They formed 9 of the billions of laws in the entire universe. At the moment, Jiang Tian seemed to be fighting with his own clone. They were evenly matched and it was extremely difficult for him. Not enough. The power of the outside world isn't enough. Jiang Tian raised his eyebrows and suddenly became ruthless. He patted the sky-swallowing demonic gourd. Many heavenly treasures, a few large spirit veins, and the blood and divine souls of the soul formation and nascent soul cultivators that he had killed in the world of deities were all brought out. They appeared in the sky and covered the sky, covering an area of a mile. For the breakthrough this time, Jiang Tian was simply betting all of his assets. Among them, there were also the resources of the human world and the 7 pirate families, as well as the support of Inzhou, Dragon Gate, Northern Sea, and other worlds. Great Sun Furnace, refine. Jiang Tian's face turned serious and he made a hand sign. Boom! A true fire furnace that was 10,000 feet tall was extremely condensed. There were ancient people, flowers, birds, insects, beasts, the 5 elements, wind and thunder, auspicious beasts and divine beasts carved on it. It was extremely bright and magnificent, and it suddenly condensed out of thin air. Under the astonished gaze of Ying Shan and Yi Gongming, this cauldron that was like a huge sun in the sky began wrapping all sorts of natural treasures like the dragon spiritual vein, as well as those divine souls, nascent souls, golden cores, and even Tao treasures and magic treasures. What Jiang Tian was going to do at the moment? Of course, he was going to use the great sun furnace to turn those heavenly treasures, golden cores, nascent souls and god fragments into essence chi to nourish the spirit embryo and increase its power. He was going to forcefully shatter the 9 supreme golden cores and successfully enter the nascent soul level. The great sun furnace was truly like the sun in the sky, giving off a radiance that was tens of thousands of yards long. Under its refinement, numerous cultivation resources were transformed into rolling spirit chi and injected into the spirit embryo. With the nourishment of the spirit chi, the spirit embryo seemed to have become much stronger. It shrunk and trembled slightly as though it was alive. Like a huge heart, it gave off thunderous sounds. Under the suppression of the spirit embryo, the 9 incomparably tough transcendental divine bodies, which seemed to be unshakable even if heaven and earth were destroyed and the sun and moon collapsed, finally started to crack. Return to 1. Jiang Tian shouted in a low voice. The 9 illusory godly bodies collided with each other, gradually shattering and melting. Time passed by quickly, and every time they collided, a world-shaking explosion would be produced. It was as though a great bell was being struck, and it contained the sonorous sound of the great Tao. Every fusion was incomparably difficult, and it was as though Mars had collided with Earth. It caused the spirit embryo to tremble violently as though it was about to collapse. After countless times of the spirit embryo being compressed and the godly bodies colliding and fusing, the 9 godly bodies finally shattered completely and turned into a ball of true chaotic energy. The chaotic energy was incomparably vast. The sun and moon rotated within it, and the stars shone brightly. Long galaxies formed and contained the energy of the beginning of heaven and earth. It was as though it could split heaven and earth apart and create a vast universe. Chaotic divine body, form. Jiang Tian shouted in a low voice. The chaotic energy rolled and surged. A bright body of stars, the chaotic divine body, appeared in the spirit embryo. This chaotic divine body was as tall as an ordinary person, and its features were 90% similar to Jiang Tian's. It was as though it was a real youth. However, it gave off a bright light, indicating its extraordinariness. Rumble. When the chaotic divine body opened its eyes were like stars, letting out bright divine light. A faint power swept in all directions, causing the sky to shake violently. Countless light array patterns engraved on the ground, mountains and walls of the entire world of Zhiyuan appeared as if they were real. They were trying their best to resist the powerful energy waves of the chaotic divine body. Even the ancient bases that had survived hundreds of battles during the Daosang era, which had withstood countless attacks from soul formation grand cultivators, seemed to be on the verge of collapsing right then. Numerous formation markings that emitted golden and silver light were miserably obliterated, while the ground and mountains in an area of 500 kilometers trembled intensely like the skin of a drum being struck. The terrifying divine might seemed capable of shaking the world and surpassing the ages, and it transformed into the aura of chaos that filled this small world and seemed to be on the verge of breaking through the spatial barriers. This body is so powerful. Shan looked at the cold and disdainful eyes of the chaotic divine body and suddenly shivered. The eyes of the chaotic divine body were peerless, cold, and emotionless. It was as if even the collapse of the world and the collapse of the world couldn't affect him at all. Under his proud, deep and cold eyes, Shan felt that he was like an ant in his eyes. Furthermore, he felt a sense of invasion. This chaotic divine body seemed to be able to push across the vast universe, suppress the worlds and destroy everything. Master, this clone doesn't have consciousness. I'm worried. Gongming suddenly took out a few Dharma artifacts. His expression was solemn and his body was tense. He stared at the chaotic divine body with extreme vigilance. Indeed, this chaotic divine body was like a clone that had just been born. It didn't have consciousness at all. At this moment he was like a newborn baby. He seemed to know how powerful he was and was ready to kill. He stood in the spirit embryo and stared at Jiang Tian through the walls of the embryo. His bright eyes were filled with deep hostility. In fact, Jiang Tian's original 9 divine bodies didn't have consciousness. They needed Jiang Tian to use his divine soul and soul devourer divine consciousness to control them. Only then could they unleash many divine powers and combat power. Although it's said to condense the chaotic divine infant, it actually includes the divine body, divine infant, and divine laws. They represent the essence, chi, and spirit of cultivation. Now, the chaotic divine body is at least 1/3 complete. But this chaotic divine body, even though it's just a clone, seems to want to fight with the main body. It has backbone, I like it. Jiang Tian's expression turned solemn. He withdrew many of his divine powers. Immediately, the great sun furnace and the spirit embryo that were floating in the sky suddenly became still. They floated in the air without moving. Seal. Jiang Tian suddenly raised his right hand slowly and pressed it on the golden lake on his forehead. He formed a seal with his fingers and palm. The moment he spoke, he pushed his palm towards the chaotic divine body. That palm landed on the face of the chaotic divine body. The black soul devourer divine consciousness in Jiang Tian's hand seemed to have come from the fiend world with an energy that could swallow and suppress everything. It formed several talisman arrays and landed on the 7 orifices of the chaotic divine body. At that moment, there was a hint of anger in the eyes of the chaotic divine body clone. He raised his hands and stepped forward as if he wanted to break free from the talisman arrays and the spirit embryo. But in the end, his 7 orifices and 5 senses were sealed. He closed his eyes as if he were in a deep sleep. Phew! Jiang Tian took a breath. As the Tai Chu celestial emperor in his previous life and a Hongmeng deity to be, he also took the chaotic divine body very seriously. Even when he faced the divine emperor Hanshi and the purple lightning divine lord, he wasn't as serious as he was just now. Luckily, the soul devourer divine consciousness comes from the supreme fiend body of hell. Its soul attack is comparable to that of a deity soul. Otherwise, with my current cultivation level, I might not be able to suppress the clone, especially if I had to split my attention several times. Jiang Tian heaved a sigh of relief in his heart, but he didn't let his guard down. He flicked his finger and pointed at the spirit embryo. The spirit embryo's inner walls rippled with layers of formation runes, sealing the chaotic divine body. Jiang Tian only stopped when he was completely silent and didn't move at all. The chaotic divine body was a divine body nurtured by nature. It was also the sun of the universe, the birth of nature. If a mortal like you formed this body out of thin air, you would be going against heaven and all kinds of disasters would befall you. Moreover, this divine body was also extremely powerful and had a strong murderous intent. Even the original body had the intention to provoke it. It had to be sealed to be safe. However, this wasn't done yet. Everything before was only the first step. Jiang Tian still had to completely merge his divine soul with it and use it to nourish and cleanse the original body. Merge! Jiang Tian bellowed and made a hand seal. He actually used the Taotai origin returning law in the spirit embryo to compress it to the size of an inch. Then, the spirit embryo trembled, and a tentacle that looked like a blood vessel stretched out and pierced Jiang Tian's chest. Boom! At that moment, Jiang Tian's entire original body shone brightly. It was dazzling and seemed to be material. It illuminated his entire body and made it transparent. The moment the clone entered his body, Jiang Tian grunted and sat cross-legged with his palms facing the sky. His thumbs and index fingers were facing each other, his middle finger was holding the ring finger, and his little finger was curled up. He made a hand seal that was similar to the Buddhist Vajra lion seal. Condense! Jiang Tian's expression was grave. He closed his eyes and spoke with his tongue like spring thunder. In his entire consciousness, the strands of Soul Devourer's consciousness that were originally churning like dark clouds and twisting black glue were summoned by the spell and instantly gathered together, turning into a black vortex. The vortex wasn't big at first, but as more and more Soul Devourer's consciousness gathered, it eventually became bigger and bigger, enveloping the entire consciousness. Condense again. Jiang Tian's hand seal changed. His fingers intersected and his thumbs clasped inwards, forming an inner binding seal. Swoosh! The huge golden vortex instantly spun at a high speed. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. It became faster and more condensed, gradually elongating. In the end, it actually shone like a black steel needle. Inject! When the Soul Devourer needle spun 3,650 times, it suddenly pierced into the empty consciousness of the chaotic divine body. The chaotic divine body clone shook slightly and his eyelids trembled as if he was about to open them. But in the end, he was restrained by countless dermic patterns and allowed the black Soul Devourer needle to pour into his consciousness. Chapter 1592. Do it again! Jiang Tian yelled. Once, twice, 9 times. In the end, 9 soul-devouring thorns went in and he injected his mind energy 9 times. Every time the thorns landed in the mind of the chaotic divine body, the bright starlight and chaotic chi dimmed a bit. In the end, only skin and skin were left, as if the body was made of flesh and blood. And at this time, after Jiang Tian's original body was absorbed into his avatar and fused into one, it was also undergoing a qualitative transformation. It quickly surpassed the human sacred body and the 9 heaven deity body and went straight to the supreme chaotic divine body. If the news were to spread, the entire universe would be shocked. Even the cultivators in the central galaxy would be dumbfounded. It should be known that even in the peerless sex and immortal holy lands of the central galaxy, it was rare to find a divine body. In short, there was only one person who could condense a divine body in 100,000 years. In the end, Jiang Tian's limbs, meridians, organs, bones, and every cell were filled with chaotic chi. His original body was no different from the chaotic divine body. At the same time, Jiang Tian's divine soul was also injected into the chaotic divine body. It could move independently, but it also obeyed Jiang Tian's orders. Jiang Tian could order it around as if it was his own arm. Besides, the chaotic chi between his original body and his clone could be used at will. Phew! Jiang Tian heaved a sigh of relief. At this point, he had finally completely refined the chaotic divine body. He had only sealed it before. Then, he used the thorns formed by his mind energy to refine the entire body into his own body. However, Jiang Tian also paid a heavy price. If a cultivator could open their heavenly eyes, they would be able to see that only a small part of Jiang Tian's mind was left. Every wisp of black mist and the rolling black goo was Jiang Tian's mind energy, immortal will and mind energy. The next step is to form the 9-orifice chaotic nascent soul. Jiang Tian's eyes shone brightly as a trace of seriousness appeared on his face. Kacha kacha! Following Jiang Tian's urging, pieces of the golden core on the inner wall of the spirit embryo peeled off like a collapsing galaxy. The spirit embryo that originally occupied the 9 galaxies had completely collapsed. It was as if a majestic and ancient shrine had decayed and declined. Only a thin layer was left. Within it, endless primordial energy and laws of nature were stirring and boiling, as if they were about to burst the spirit embryo. However, Jiang Tian was condensing his nascent soul outside his body, so he wasn't affected much. His face was calm as he bent his fingers and pointed repeatedly. A loud bang was heard. The lid of the great sun furnace flew up, and waves of vast and surging true essence poured into the spirit embryo like a huge river, nourishing and strengthening it, stabilizing it. The spirit embryo became thick and heavy once again. Its magic power was incomparably strong and dense as it boiled. It was like another huge smelting furnace that trembled non-stop and compressed with all its might. It wanted to fuse the 9 types of golden cores into one. This process lasted for about 10 days, and this was under the effect of the time array disk's time acceleration. However, in the end, although the spirit embryo shrunk to the size of a chicken egg and the 9 golden cores shattered, it still couldn't condense into a true chaotic 9-orifice nascent soul. Sigh. It's harder to form a nascent soul than to reach the heavens. It's much harder than reaching the soul formation realm. Looks like I have no choice but to gamble with my life. Jiang Tian sighed softly. His gaze was deep, and a hint of determination flashed across his face. I'll absorb the spirit embryo into my body and use my body and soul as a furnace to refine all spells. Only then will I have a chance of survival. In fact, Jiang Tian had previously taken the 30-foot divine disc out of his body to form his nascent soul to preserve his body and soul. This way, even if he failed to form his nascent soul and the spirit embryo shattered, he would still have at least 30% of his cultivation. However, it seemed that it was difficult to have both. Swallow! Jiang Tian opened his mouth and directly swallowed the spirit embryo into his stomach. At this moment, the aura on Jiang Tian's body became chaotic. The light around his body flickered, and the chaotic aura expanded and contracted for a while. Shockingly, it was the incomparably vast and violent laws of true essence that rushed out of the walls of the spirit embryo and interfered with the corporeal body. It filled Jiang Tian's organs, limbs, and bones, swimming and charging crazily within. If Jiang Tian hadn't condensed the chaotic divine body at the first step, his body would have been as hard as a quasi-divine treasure. If he were like an extremely hard copper pea, he wouldn't have been able to withstand it at all. Even so, his face became very ugly. Sometimes, it was pale, sometimes it was like a piece of golden paper, and there were even traces of blood seeping out of his 7 orifices. Then, amidst the shocked exclamations of Ying Shan and Yi Gongming, Jiang Tian took a deep breath and stood up with difficulty. Suddenly, he jumped up and shot into the sky like a dragon, entering the great sun furnace. Condense! Jiang Tian's expression didn't change as he calmly let out a low shout. Within the great sun furnace, all the spirit qi that was churning like clouds was like a tornado, pouring into Jiang Tian's body. Even the great sun furnace had disappeared completely. The next moment, in the spirit embryo, the 9 golden core fragments and aura suddenly contracted. Jiang Tian's boundless primal chaos, true essence, laws, divine soul, and the blood of his corporeal body abruptly shrunk and gathered in the spirit embryo. At this moment, the entire world was silent, cold, and dry, as if time had frozen. Only Jiang Tian was left in the sky above the ring-shaped mountain, sitting cross-legged like a stone statue that had existed since time immemorial. At this moment, the astral wind stopped, the vital qi froze, dust fell to the ground, and even time seemed to have frozen. In the void, only Jiang Tian could be seen sitting there cross-legged. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, an unknown amount of time passed. Jiang Tian was like a clay statue. There wasn't a trace of spirit qi around him. All the chaotic qi had been retracted into his body, and there wasn't even a trace of dermic power. Even the luster on his skin was dim, as if he had died for thousands of years. This state lasted for 3 days and 3 nights. Suddenly, there was a rumbling sound. Jiang Tian's body suddenly exploded. Countless faint golden god's bones, mercury-like marrow, and organs covered in colorful light all burst open. God's blood splattered everywhere, dyeing the sky red and exploding all over the ring-shaped mountain. Even his head wasn't left behind. What was left was a ball of black gelatinous substance wrapped around a bean-shaped placenta that was violently swelling, and an incomparably faint spirit shadow. In that ball of black gelatinous substance, one could vaguely see Jiang Tian's spirit rising and falling, trying its best to harmonize the vast and surging vital qi in the spirit embryo. My lord, don't take any more risks. Where there's life, there's hope. My lord, perhaps you are still lacking some cultivation materials. This scene frightened Yi Gongming and Yingshan. Many cultivators were crying as they knelt on the ground and begged. Condense. Jiang Tian's faint spirit spoke. At the same time, an obscure voice came from the Black Soul Devourer. It was like the whisper of a god-devil from the deep devil realm. So. Countless blood, bones, and organ fragments came from all directions as if they were pulled over by an invisible palm. It was like a scene being replayed, condensing at the Black Soul Devourer and restoring Jiang Tian's true body. But it had just condensed for less than 2 days. The fleshy body exploded once again. That black gelatinous substance swelled even more than before. That spirit embryo became much bigger and was now the size of a basketball. The intense light within was fluctuating with all its might. It felt like there were countless strands of energy roaming about. It felt like the entire placenta and the soul devourer's divine consciousness would burst apart at any moment. But at this moment, Jiang Tian's spirit remained indifferent. He only opened his mouth and shouted. Many blood and bones condensed once again, transforming into Jiang Tian's fleshy body. And so, this happened 9 times in a row. Jiang Tian's fleshy body exploded 9 times, each time more thoroughly than the last. In the end, not even a small piece of bone could be found. All of them had turned into fragments. But Jiang Tian was still struggling to condense, even though it became more difficult as it went on. Even Jiang Tian's Black Soul Devourer's divine consciousness seemed a bit thinner. The condensed god body was like a diamond with flaws. It wasn't as dazzling, perfect, and strong as it used to be. However, Jiang Tian had forcibly used a supreme divine ability to shatter and be reborn 9 times. Every time he was reborn, even though the energy of his divine body seemed dim, endless azure divine thunderbolts struck and imprinted many dharma laws in it, making the energy of his fleshy body seem more ancient and majestic. It carried a hint of ancient and everlasting Tao runes. Those dharma laws didn't just enter his body, they also entered his true essence and divine soul, making that golden light ball shrink. Boom! When he was reborn for the 9th time, the golden light ball in Jiang Tian's body finally shrank to the size of a goose egg again. That golden light ball emitted a gentle light, like a placenta. Boundless profound creation energy surged within it, and an intense miracle that was unknown to the world was occurring within it. Dong! An incomparably indistinct voice came from the spirit embryo, sounding like the heartbeat of a baby. At this moment, Jiang Tian's divine soul was formed. Chapter 1593. The second sound, the third, the fourth. Each sound was more powerful than the last. In the end, it sounded like a god was beating a drum, shaking the world. All of the living beings within a radius of 100 kilometers felt their bodies go limp. Boom! When the 9th sound was heard, all the craters in a 100-mile radius were crushed at the same time. Even the nascent soul cultivators were bleeding from their eyes, ears, nose, and mouth. All of them were terrified and they tried to run away. My lord is a nascent soul cultivator. Go back to the base, Yi Gongming said while retreating. Those waves were too powerful. They would be affected if they stayed outside and might even be severely injured. In a blink, many of the cultivators went back to the base and activated countless arrays. However, The buildings in the base were still trembling violently under the powerful waves. They were like small boats in the middle of a huge wave. Those were ancient relics that could withstand the attack of a soul formation cultivator. That was enough to show how powerful Jiang Tian's nascent soul was. Even though they were hiding in the bunker, Yi Gongming and Yingshan were able to see something through the Dharma artifacts they left outside. Many giant golden light screens were displayed and they were showing the scenes of Jiang Tian's breakthrough. Everyone stood below and stared intently, their faces filled with excitement. Most of them were above the nascent soul level and had experienced the nascent soul level, but they had never seen such a nascent soul level. What's that? All of a sudden, one of the cultivators widened his eyes in shock. To everyone's horror, they saw a long river of black water appear behind Jiang Tian. The river was as black as ink and extremely heavy. It cracked the dimension below and a giant gully appeared on the ground. Not only that, the river behind Jiang Tian extended endlessly. It was unknown whether it was tens of thousands of miles long or even hundreds of thousands of miles long. Billowing black water turned into a towering river that stretched across the sky. It seemed to be able to cross the entire planet Shiyuan. And yet, that was only the first level. Then, a towering divine tree appeared. Countless primordial energy of the world turned into vigorous vitality and fell from the tree. Each of them could easily kill a nascent soul cultivator. Between the branches and leaves, there were glittering vitality like stars floating up and down, as if it could create a world. After that, a rock flapped its wings with the intention of flying. Its wings were like clouds that covered the sky while numerous black hole worlds coiled around it, causing space to be obliterated, and it seemed as if a single wing was capable of destroying 3,000 worlds and traversing the heavens. Then, the lightning mantis, the ice god, the Gingjin divine emperor, and the winged dragon appeared one after another, shocking the world. Heavenly Minister! But how can there be such a vast number of celestial phenomena in this world? And there are so many of them. There are 9 of them. Not even the gods of the ancient celestial court could achieve that. Yi Gongming was shocked. He had lived a long life and had seen many things. However, at this moment, he was completely stunned. Golden core perfected cultivators had Dharma forms. The Dharma forms of nascent soul heavenly lords were usually called heavenly forms because of their powerful Dharma power. However, even the ancient sages could not achieve 9 heavenly forms during the nascent soul realm. They could be invincible just by cultivating 2 or 3 laws. These heavenly forms are way too frightening. Yingshan trembled from head to toe, feeling as though he was facing the ancient gods. The pressure was way too immense. Against that unparalleled divine might, everyone was shocked and wanted nothing more than to prostrate on the ground and kowtow 9 times. On the other hand, Yi Gongming revealed a look of delight as he said with a piercing gaze, These 9 heavenly forms are more than enough to deal with the ruins emperor. However, to Jiang Tian, all of this was nothing more than a matter of course. The most dangerous phase was already over. The 9 heavenly forms were merely remnants of the 9 divine bodies and the appearance of the laws. When all 9 heavenly forms appeared, the spirit embryo that was the size of a goose egg within Jiang Tian's body finally lost its brilliance and color. A thumb-sized nascent soul sat in a lotus position in the middle of the spirit embryo. He was very small and had delicate features. His appearance was exactly the same as Jiang Tian's. He looked extremely tiny and inconspicuous. That nascent soul was docile and its body was filled with chaos. It was also emitting a faint divine glow and had an eternal, unmoving and perfect Tao rune. It was as if it would remain unmoved even if the sun and moon collapsed or the stars were destroyed, just like a Tao venerable of the 9 heavens. What was even more peculiar was that mortals had 7 orifices while that baby had 9. There was an additional eye on its forehead and on its belly button. At the same time, the divine tree, the Kunpeng, the winged dragon and the other 9 heavenly forms appeared behind the nascent soul one after another, turning into 9-colored divine light that surrounded the nascent soul like a giant wheel. The divine infant abruptly opened its eyes. Boom! All the Daos in the world seemed to rumble. It was filled with endless energy, as if it was nurtured by the heavenly Tao. It was several times stronger and more perfect than a sacred-grade soul formation cultivator, as if it was nurtured by the essence of the sun and moon. Ugh. A tired, leisurely and somewhat satisfied sigh sounded in the ring-shaped mountain. Jiang Tian slowly opened his eyes with a complicated look. After reincarnating for almost 10 years, going through thousands of disasters and fighting in different worlds, the 9-orifice chaotic divine infant had finally been completed. At the moment, a year had passed according to the time on Earth, and a month had passed according to the time in the ruins of deity. The entire ruins of deity had been stirred up and a storm was about to come. In the Cloud Dragon Mountain Range in the Dinghai County of Xianan Province, primitive monsters were everywhere and all kinds of monsters were running around. This place was extremely dangerous. However, there was a magnificent building surrounded by an array hidden in the mountain. It was called the Yuntian Palace. It was one of the strongholds of Yun Zhongzi. The leader of the guards there, Yun Fei, was one of Yun Zhongzi's descendants. He was already a nascent soul cultivator and was patrolling the clouds with a group of bandits. Few people knew about this place. Every time the bandits went in and out, they would rely on teleportation arrays. Besides, the surrounding environment was dangerous, so normally no cultivators from the ruins of deity would set foot there. Leader Yun Fei, it seems that the outside world is in chaos. A large number of cultivators from the ruins of deity have invaded the Green Dragon King's fallen deity's sea region. Behind him, a cultivator in a white outfit said with fear in his eyes. Yun Fei was very handsome and looked a bit like Yun Zhongzi. He was wearing a white feather robe and looked like an immortal. After hearing that, he nodded and sighed. The soul formation cultivators of the academy have all joined the battle. I heard that the battle hasn't ended yet, but dozens of nascent soul cultivators and thousands of golden core cultivators have died in the water palace. It's very tragic. The cultivator in a white outfit sighed. Do you think the cultivators from the ruins of deity will attack the Yuntian Palace? Very likely. The 7 bandit families are doing a lot of things now. Even the killers of the human world have joined the battle. The ruins of deity have already started a crazy counterattack. Hearing this, Yun Fei's face became solemn. His eyes were extremely sharp as he said in a deep voice, "However, we can't interfere in the battle. We can only do our own thing. Aren't the Great Ko family's actions a little too impatient? We've been fighting a war of attrition for thousands of years, but now they're going all out." A disciple of the Yuntian Palace mumbled. "Can we?" Yun Fei smiled and said, "I think the Taichu Emperor's strategy is quite good. We're wearing them down, but the Empire of Deity is also growing rapidly. At this rate, they might not be able to recover their land even after 10,000 years. But can we withstand the counterattack of the Empire of Deity?" I heard that the real Kong Taichu has already left the ruins of deity. Some disciples were still doubtful. Yun Fei's face was full of determination and his eyes shone with admiration. "Because we have Kong Taichu. How powerful is Kong Taichu? I heard that he once defeated the ancestral patriarchs of the 7 bandit families, including ancestral patriarch Yun Zhongzi?" A disciple suddenly asked excitedly. "Although I didn't see it with my own eyes, I was ordered to go to planet Xi'an to repair the battlefield." Yun Fei exclaimed excitedly. "Oh my God, a few ring-shaped mountains have been destroyed, and those bases have been reduced to pieces. Those were the bases left by the ancient heavenly court, and they were powerful enough to fight soul formation cultivators. They were all smashed to pieces. It was as if a falling planet had hit them several times. Later, I saw the images left in the Dharma artifact. Kong Taichu was so powerful that he completely suppressed the ancestral patriarchs of the 7 bandit families. His divine power was ever-changing. That's so powerful. Is there really such a powerful person in this world? I heard that he's just a nascent soul cultivator." Someone said with admiration and disbelief. Yun Fei said with a hint of disdain, "You didn't see it with your own eyes, so of course you wouldn't believe it." I didn't believe it either. But I've seen the surveillance footage. He's like an ancient god. He fights from one side to the other. He punches a ring-shaped mountain. Even the ancient runes are destroyed. That's terrifying. But after all, he killed Divine Emperor Hanshi. He must have the combat ability of a soul formation cultivator. Although everyone felt it was unbelievable, they had to believe it. There's a rumor going around that he's not an ordinary person, but a grand cultivator from another planet, or even the reincarnation of a deity. His cultivation art is more advanced than ours. He can give birth to Dharma laws when he forms the nascent soul. And those Dharma laws are particularly terrifying, and there's more than one kind. Yun Fei said calmly and excitedly. In his mind, Jiang Tian was undoubtedly his idol. He worshipped Jiang Tian even more than Yun Zhongzi. So he's the reincarnation of a grand cultivator. No wonder he's so powerful. Everyone was enlightened and gasped. Those legends were incredible, but if that wasn't the case, they couldn't explain Jiang Tian's strength. Yun Fei said proudly, I heard that Senior Tai Chu went to cultivate in seclusion this time. If he comes out, I'm afraid he'll be the most invincible cultivator in the ruins of immortality. Yun Fei was about to brag about Jiang Tian's combat ability when suddenly a gloomy laugh came from the sky. Kong Taichu, the most invincible cultivator in the ruins of immortality? Ask him to come out and fight with me. Who's there? Many disciples of the Yuntian Palace were shocked. This person was very far away, but his immortal will covered a radius of 10 miles. He was a peerless master. Yun Fei was shocked and felt that something was wrong. He hurriedly said, Run. It's a master. Chapter 1594. Sensing the invasion of a peerless overlord, Yun Fei crushed the communication Dharma artifact at his waist and signaled the disciples of Yuntian Palace to escape. The disciples of the Yuntian Palace had been on high alert since the beginning of the battle. After receiving the message, they immediately turned into white beams of light or cranes and flew in all directions like supersonic fighter jets. Land! A shout came from the clouds. An overwhelming heavenly flame descended, covering a radius of 5 kilometers. Boom! Thousands of disciples were immediately frozen. Even Yun Fei, who had reached the peak stage of the nascent soul level, couldn't escape. Moreover, the heavenly fire around them was crazily burning their bodies and souls, but they couldn't even let out a scream. Land! Who's that soul formation grand cultivator? Yun Fei yelled in his mind. Then he saw something. A middle-aged man with a body as tall as a mountain, thick black hair fluttering in the wind, sword-like eyebrows, starry eyes, and a gaze that pierced through the void like divine lightning, stood on the bronze chariot and descended rapidly. On his back was a flaming heavenly blade. He had a heaven-warping appearance and an invincible aura. His aura could devour mountains and rivers, and his eyes were filled with arrogance. Nice mountain. The middle-aged man didn't look at the others. Instead, he looked at a mountain 30,000 feet tall. That mountain was next to the Yuntian Palace. There were countless offensive Tao patterns carved on it. It was one of the outer fortresses of the Yuntian Palace. It protected the Yuntian Palace from the outside. What does he want? Yun Fei was terrified. Then he saw. The middle-aged man suddenly reached out and a flame appeared between his fingers. There was a loud rumble as he sucked the 300,000-foot mountain into the air. Under the scorching heat of the flames, the towering trees and boulders were pulverized into dust. The Golden Core stage demonic beasts didn't even have the chance to scream before they were turned into ashes in the blink of an eye. In the next moment, the 30,000-meter-tall mountain was set ablaze. Red lava and flames surrounded it, and black smoke that resembled essence chi crashed into the Yuntian Palace with a loud clang. The sound of wind, flames, explosions, sonic booms, and cracks entered his ears like the howling of 10,000 ghosts, forming a torrent of sound. Amidst this ear-piercing and complex noise, the Yuntian Palace's countless light shields were erected. Dazzling light shot up into the sky in an attempt to defend themselves. However, all of this was like an eggshell that had been hit by a 1,000-kilogram hammer. It cracked in a second. Clang. The flaming mountain smashed into the Yuntian palace like it was crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. The latter was torn apart in the blink of an eye. The buildings collapsed, and the hundreds of disciples who did not manage to escape in time were killed in an instant. Nothing was left of the Yuntian palace. Everything was turned into fire, lava, and dust. Even the Yuntian mountain had been smashed and the cultivators were nowhere to be found. Flames soared into the sky, rocks flew into the air, and shock waves surged. The earth quaked and the mountains shook. At this moment, the world was in a mess. The ground trembled violently, and the mountains within 100 miles shook violently, cracking and collapsing. Even the mountains 1,000 miles away were still trembling. The power of a single strike was so terrifying. Who is he? He created a fire domain and controlled 1,000 people? He's so powerful. All the cultivators were frightened and asked with their immortal will. An old cultivator yelled, "It's Divine Emperor Lai Hua. How did he find out about our stronghold?" What? Divine Emperor Lai Hua, the third of the 10 divine emperors? He's a real soul formation grand cultivator. Everyone was shocked. Those who really knew the empire of deity knew that even though the 10 divine emperors were called the same, they weren't all from the same generation. There were different levels. Divine Emperor Lai Hua was the first 3 divine emperors and had reached the soul formation level a few thousand years ago. He had been taught by the old ruins emperor himself and was also called the divine emperor. He was much more powerful than his descendants. Kong Taichu killed my juniors and messed up our country. Anyone who has anything to do with him will die like this palace. Seeing the destroyed Yuntian palace, Inferno Godly Emperor's face did not change at all. His voice was as cold as ice, making people shudder. That kind of soul formation grand cultivator had been through hundreds of battles and the bloody battle of the royal family. That was why he had become so cold-hearted and regarded human lives as worthless. Not to mention the fact that the Yuntian palace belonged to the 7 great bandits. Killing it would only make him happy. Even when he killed the rebellious imperial concubines, when did he ever feel the slightest ripple in his heart? He didn't immediately use his flame domain to kill everyone. Instead, he waited for the right moment to take control of everyone. All of you, submit or die. At that moment, countless people were terrified and no one dared to say a word. All of a sudden, Yun Fei became determined and shouted with his immortal will, "I, Yun Fei, a descendant of the ancient heavenly courts and a disciple of the Yuntian palace, only want to die. Aren't you afraid of death?" The Inferno Godly Emperor looked at him with interest and laughed. "You're a nascent soul cultivator at 100 years old and you have a bit of the spirit crane bloodline. If you join the 9 troops, you can at least become a divine general. I only want to die. I don't want to be a slave." Yun Fei yelled with his immortal will. "As you wish." The Inferno God King showed a look of disdain. He snorted and flicked his finger, sending the Inferno domain towards Yun Fei. "We want to die." Someone else suddenly yelled. Divine Emperor Lai Hua was startled. The fire domain stopped again and he looked at the cultivator. "How dare you provoke me? Divine Emperor Lai Hua, kill me if you dare. We, the survivors of the deity ground, are never afraid of death. Damn it, just kill me. I've already thought of myself as dead since the day I joined the 7 great bandits. Hurry up and give me a quick death. I'll be a hero again after 18 years. Brothers, let's go together. We'll have companions. We'll be brothers again in the next life and fight against the world of darkness." Everyone shouted and sent messages to each other with their immortal will. They didn't have much fear, and there was only hatred that was deep in their bones. Their faces were filled with resolute expressions, and they were impassioned and full of lofty aspirations. "Why aren't you afraid of death? Why are you rebelling?" Divine Emperor Lai Hua said. "Isn't it good to be obedient? The empire of the ruins of immortality doesn't have to kill you, as long as you listen to them. Who would want to fight and drink blood if they could be happy and safe? We're not doing this for the sake of justice. We're doing this for our descendants." Yun Fei said in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. The imperial dynasty of the Ruins of Immortality has set up a starry sky chi-gathering spell formation to absorb the spiritual energy of all the other worlds into the Ruins of Immortality. These worlds will become dead planets, crumbling and annihilating. Our descendants will all be transformed into quintessence, blood, and chi, and become your resources. The empire of the Ruins of Immortality has lasted for thousands of years, but for the survivors of the deity ground, there are only 2 generations. One is the time when we were slaves, and the other is when we couldn't be slaves. Now, it's the time when we can't be slaves. Do I need to say more? We're just fighting for survival. The Ruins of Immortality are too vicious. Everyone was silent. Many cultivators looked solemn and were ready to die. You don't understand. You don't know what kind of disaster the Ruins of Immortality is facing. Divine Emperor Lai Hua was surprisingly calm. He even looked a bit sad and lowered his head. The descendants of the Emperor of the Ruins of Immortality are just trying to survive. There are billions of people in the Ruins of Immortality, but in the end, only a few of us can survive. Your resistance is futile, because in the end, our descendants will all die. Yeah, we're just trying to survive. But between you and me, it's a life and death struggle. So, let's do it. Yun Fei looked calm and didn't show any fear. Everyone will die sooner or later. You guys can leave first. Divine Emperor Lai Hua's face was as cold as iron. He flicked his finger. There was a boom. The fire domain was activated and the sky was shattered. Thousands of cultivators of Yuntian Palace were turned into ashes. Even their divine souls were burned to ashes and soon scattered in the air. The moment before they died, they looked at each other and smiled. They hadn't lived their lives in vain. They had fought in the Ruins of Immortality and killed many cultivators of the Emperor of the Ruins of Immortality. Their ancestors had also fought bravely and they had followed the path of their ancestors. Now, they had fallen into the hands of the enemy, but they had companions and brothers on the way to the underworld. They weren't alone, so what was there to be dissatisfied with? If they had any regrets, they would only have one thing. They didn't witness Jiang Tian destroy the Emperor of the Ruins of Immortality with their own eyes. However, they believed that Jiang Tian would definitely do it, that he would get revenge for them. Under the pressure of Divine Emperor Lai Hua, none of the 3,000 cultivators of Yuntian Palace surrendered. When the news spread, the world was shocked. Divine Emperor Lai Hua had personally taken action. The counterattack of the Ruins of Immortality had begun. When the news spread, it was as if a strong wind from the 9 heavens had swept through the stars. Countless cultivators and mortals in the South Gate Galaxy were excited. Compared to the heroes of the Great Ko clan and Jiang Tian, Divine Emperor Lai Hua's name was too famous. He had entered the Soul Formation realm thousands of years ago and had swept through the Ruins of Immortality, quelling chaos everywhere. Even the Great Ko clan and the Assassin dynasty had died in his hands, including 3 Soul Formation cultivators. It could be said that his name was almost on par with the Sword God of the Ruins of Emperor's Palace, the Teacher, and the Heavenly River Star Lord. Many cultivators knew that it was because Divine Emperor Lai Hua had successfully suppressed the Great Ko clan and the Assassin dynasty that he was very experienced in quelling chaos. Now, after thousands of years of cultivation in seclusion, Divine Emperor Lai Hua's true strength was much stronger than before. In fact, as the commander-in-chief of this battle, Divine Emperor Lai Hua rarely took action personally. Most of the time, he stood on the bronze chariot and commanded. Those who took action were basically the cultivators of the Academy, Ruins of Emperor's Palace, Sky Palace, and many experts of the Grotto Heavens. They all had to listen to his orders. They swept through the strongholds of the Great Ko clan and the Assassin dynasty. Year 9332 of the Ruins of Immortality era, on the 18th of July, the stronghold of the Great Ko clan, Divine Ox Palace, was razed to the ground by the Academy's disciples led by Grand Chancellor Ban Shan. Niu Duigen's personal disciples and 10 nascent soul cultivators were killed. On the 9th of August, Divine Emperor Lai Hua led an army of 100,000 from the Ruins of Immortality and broke through the defense line of the fallen Immortal Sea, the territory of the great Green Dragon King. The enemy's 30,000 water clan cultivators fled in all directions, and 3,000 cultivators were slaughtered. On the 12th of August, the stronghold of the great clan, Wind Thunder Palace, was destroyed. On the 1st of September, the army of the Ruins of Immortality killed a group of tomb robbers. The Ying and Tian families of the tomb robbers suffered great losses. In a short period of time, news of victory spread throughout the Ruins of Immortality. Divine Emperor Lai Hua led an army that was almost invincible, sweeping through millions of miles. There was even a time when he almost killed Nyo Duotian of the Seven Great clan. Previously, the Ruins of Emperor's Palace captured a Gate of Heaven influence. Sky Palace developed a spatial detection artifact that can track spatial traces. The Gate of Heaven influence and many strongholds were instantly exposed. This was the conjecture of the Great clan. This news was despairing. Chapter 1595. In that case, it was not surprising that such a situation would occur. The Ruins Emperor's Palace had been in this world for 10,000 years and was deeply rooted. There were not many remnants of the deity land in the Ruins of Immortality. There were only 100,000 people in the Great family. There were also some remnants of the deity land, which also numbered in the hundreds of thousands, but they were basically living in seclusion and had no intention of resisting the Ruins of Immortality. What about the Ruins of Immortality? There were at least a few billion people, at least 5 or 6 million cultivators, and more than 10 times the number of Soul Formation Realm cultivators. The difference in strength was too great. It turned out that the Great family and the assassins were only able to survive by relying on the Gate of Heaven influence and many secret strongholds and concealment arrays. However, once they were exposed and a head-on battle broke out, they would immediately be at a disadvantage. The Great family and the Assassin dynasty are just old demon clown. They can't withstand a single blow. The sect master of the Tianmong Grotto Heaven said and laughed arrogantly. The beautiful world of the Ruins of Immortality will belong to us after all. Their ancestors were defeated by us, let alone their descendants. They are just ants. I can crush them with one finger. The sect master of the Tianji Grotto Heaven looked disdainfully. He swept through the strongholds and announced on various occasions. It's been 2 months. I don't know where Kong Teichu is hiding like a turtle. Does he not dare to come out and fight with me? I'm so disappointed in him. Divine Emperor Lai Hua's black hair fluttered in the wind, and his tall and majestic body was awe-inspiring. After sweeping through a stronghold, he looked down at the world and shook his head and sighed. He seemed to be disappointed and disdainful. For the Empire of the Ruins of Immortality, this was news of victory and laughter. But for the Great family and the assassins, it was bad news. They suffered heavy losses and were in a precarious situation. The strongholds were destroyed one after another, and they could only carry out guerrilla warfare. To put it bluntly, the Great family was now like rats crossing the street. They could only hide in the depths of the desolate mountains and marshes, and they hid their tracks carefully while being beaten to the point they didn't dare show themselves at all. Despite this being the case, it was still difficult to avoid the pursuit of the great army from the Ruins of Immortality. Armored cavalry troops weaved through the skies, trampling through mountains and rivers as they pursued in all directions. There were countless scouting artifacts of various sizes all over the sky, mountains, and cities. Whenever they discovered something, the cultivators of the Ruins of Immortality would immediately swarm over. Often, tens of thousands of cultivators would join forces to attack a few hundred or even a few thousand cultivators. Every day, they were fleeing for their lives. Cultivators were dying all the time. Even Nyo Duotian, Tu Fei, and the other leaders of the bandits were injured. Although Divine Emperor Liao Hua had only attacked a few times, he was able to severely injure semi-god realm warriors and destroy mountains and rivers within a radius of 100 miles. Some people had already called him the first divine emperor and the fourth unparalleled giant. Even the 3 unparalleled giants were overshadowed by him. As for Jiang Tian, he had not dared to come out and fight for many days. He had already become a laughingstock. He even established a new celestial court and called himself the Celestial Emperor. He's trying to take over our great rivers and mountains. He's really the king of the south. An ant wants to swallow the sky. How laughable. After all, he's just a bumpkin from a remote planet. It's normal for him to be afraid when facing a veteran semi-god realm warrior like Divine Emperor Liao Hua. I heard that his subordinates, the 7 bandits, were beaten until they vomited blood and cried for their parents. He didn't even dare to come out. How laughable! On the ruins of immortality, mortals and cultivators alike, billions of people were full of mockery and disdain. In a secret stronghold located in the barren mountains and rivers, thousands of cultivators were exhausted and dusty. Their dharma artifacts were damaged, their armors were broken, and their bodies were stained with blood. Many cultivators were injured. Some took elixirs and sat cross-legged to meditate. Some glanced at the sky outside vigilantly like frightened birds. Some were lying on the ground and moaning. They didn't even have any elixirs to heal their wounds. They could only use their dharma power to repair their broken bodies. The bandit family had a strong foundation, but they had been fighting almost every day. They had almost used up all their elixirs. Niu Duotian was smoking a pipe. His face was sad and his eyes were hollow. His 10 personal disciples were all dead. Tu Fei had just come for a meeting after a big battle. His divine treasures were cracked, and the blood stains on his body had coagulated. His hair was stained with blood. He was sitting on a rock, breathing heavily. Tian Shu was holding a big wine jar and drinking himself into a stupor. Thinking of his dead comrades, he couldn't help but sob softly. Bai Muxue had been looking around and adjusting the concealment arrays. When she saw those injured cultivators, she couldn't help but cry. She hated herself for being so useless. After the big battle started, she had been adjusting the support arrays of the gate of sky bearing everywhere to avoid being tracked. But she had only succeeded 1/3 of the time. The rest had been discovered. But in fact, it wasn't her fault. Although she had been taught by Jiang Tian, it was only for a short time. She couldn't be compared with the Sky Palace, which was proficient in space arrays, or the Grand Chancellor of the Academy, Jade Lotus Fairy. Even the Fu brothers, who had always been lively and heartless, sat on the ground obediently and said nothing. I've contacted the assassin dynasties in the Heavenly Court in Hell. They refused to join the new Heavenly Court. The assassin emperor, Ji Tao, looked solemn and sad as he talked to Yun Zhongzi. After Jiang Tian left the ruins of immortality and started his seclusion, the 7 great bandits were under the command of Yun Zhongzi. He made all the decisions. But Yun Zhongzi nodded. He wasn't surprised, but a trace of sadness flashed in his eyes. He clenched his fists tightly again. Before this, the bandits and assassins had attacked crazily and gained a lot. Some of the low-level sects and hostile forces that had been suppressed by the ruins of immortality were ready to join forces with the bandits and assassins to rebel against the ruins of immortality. At least they could take advantage of the chaos and profit from it. In just 2 months, earth-shaking changes had taken place. More and more followers of the Inferno Godly Emperor were gathering. Even the small and medium-sized sects that had stayed out of the war had come to meet the Inferno Godly Emperor, who was directly related to the ancient emperor. They joined the war to besiege and kill the 7 great bandits and the assassins of the human world. At first, Yun Zhongzi still had a glimmer of hope. With the help of the assassins from the Heavenly Court in Hell, they could hold on for another month. But now, they might not even be able to hold on for a month. Seniors, what should we do? Ji Yusha couldn't stand it anymore. She looked a little angry and shouted, if it weren't for the wrong strategy made by Senior Tai Chu, our sky-bearing gate wouldn't have been exposed. And we wouldn't have suffered so many casualties. In such a short time, almost half of our assassins in the human world have been killed. Bastard! Ji Tao couldn't listen to her anymore. He was angry and slapped her face, shouting, that sky-bearing gate was captured 100 years ago. Sky Palace and the Academy spent 100 years to crack it. Do you think the array masters of Sky Palace and the Academy would have been able to crack it if it had just been captured in a year or two? It can be said that when the sky-bearing gate was captured 100 years ago, we were destined to lose today. This has nothing to do with His Majesty Tai Chu's strategy. If you dare to be disrespectful to His Majesty again, I'll kill you. Jiyusha burst into tears. She covered her face and didn't speak, but she despised Jiang Tian, who had caused all this, to the extreme. You went into seclusion during the war. What a joke. You must be afraid of the empire of the ruins of immortality. That's why you asked us to block the knives for you. Hold on. Preserve your strength. Yun Zhongzi stood up, pulled himself together, glanced at everyone, and said in a deep voice, "Before Senior Tai Chu comes out of seclusion, as long as we can survive and preserve the roots of the new heavenly court in the future, it will be the greatest victory." At this time, a disciple flew over and said, "Grand Ancestor, not good. 100 miles away, there are 3,000 soldiers from the ruins of immortality patrolling. They seem to be led by 2 semi-god realm warriors. Alert! If they don't find us, don't do anything. If they find us, rush out immediately." Yun Zhongzi gnashed his teeth and said, "At this time, in the cold and lonely hibernating star, in this inhuman dimension, Jiang Tian's cultivation had reached the moment when he was about to make a breakthrough. Water and fire are incompatible. Today, I finally condensed the laws of water and fire. However, the process was too difficult. Above the ruined crater, Jiang Tian sat cross-legged in the void, with a solemn look in his eyes, and sighed. Why were cultivators so much more powerful than ordinary people? In short, their essence, energy, and spirit were just powerful. No matter how high a cultivator's level was, they couldn't get rid of those 3 factors. The corresponding essence, energy, and spirit were the body, true essence, and dharma power, or mind energy. Specifically, Jiang Tian's breakthrough this time was to form a chaotic divine body, divine infant, and divine laws. Before that, Jiang Tian had already condensed the chaotic divine body and the 9-orifice chaotic divine infant. The last step was also the most critical one. It was to merge the 9 laws into the chaotic divine laws and refine them inside and outside the chaotic divine infant and divine body. Chapter 1596. At that moment, the laws of water and fire that had been tempered were circling around the divine infant in Jiang Tian's spirit embryo. It was clearly the vermilion bird's flames that soared into the sky, blazing and scorching hot. However, it was like a surging wave or a trickle of water that was pervasive and pervasive. The mystic water was clearly bone-chilling and heavy like a mountain, but it soared into the sky in the shape of a flame, like a heavenly fire burning the plains. Moreover, the 2 could switch at will, sometimes completely scarlet red, sometimes completely pitch black. It was extremely strange. "Refine!" Jiang Tian shouted again. The spirit embryo shrank and suppressed the laws of metal into the laws of water and fire. The laws of metal shone brightly, and they were like pieces of a heavenly sword that could split the world. There was a loud rumble. After a long time, there was a loud explosion. The spirit embryo in Jiang Tian's body shook, and the small nascent soul roared as if it was cheering. The laws of metal were also merged. The laws of metal, vermilion bird, true fire, and mystic water all had 3 elements. Take the laws of mystic water, for example. It used to be as heavy as a mountain and could destroy everything. But now, it had the agility of flames and the sharpness of the laws of metal. Merge. In the end, Jiang Tian finally managed to merge all 9 types of laws together. There was a loud rumble. At this moment, the void within 100,000 miles around Star Jian suddenly trembled violently. Countless great Daos roared and the space trembled. Many shining stars in the sky seemed to be about to fall from the sky. As for planet Xiuan, it trembled violently, as if it was about to expand and burst out of the folded space, or jump out of the folded space and appear in the starry sky. The golden core was formed by condensing the essence chi of heaven and earth. Of course, there would be thunder tribulations. When Jiang Tian was forming the divine-grade golden core at the bottom of the Tunguska Fiend Lake, He had cut off 9 laws and refined them into his golden core. Even though he was tens of thousands of miles underground, he still attracted the attention of the great Daos of heaven and earth and thunder tribulations. And now, Jiang Tian had cut off the divine laws and refined them into his nascent soul. The world immediately sensed it, and countless thunder tribulations were about to happen. And this thunder tribulation was more than 100 times more terrifying than the one he had faced before. The tribulation is coming. Yi Gongming was shocked. He was about to let the great co-warriors hide in the underground array when he suddenly saw the fluctuation of law on Jiang Tian's body suddenly retracting. In the blink of an eye, the world of Zhiyuan regained its calm. Tens of thousands of kilometers away, in the depths of the starry sky, the sea of lightning and the thunder dragons seemed to be unable to find their target. After circling around in confusion for a while, they actually gradually shrank and dissipated. The thunder tribulation disappeared? Yi Gongming was surprised. Could it be that Master has failed in condensing his nascent soul? Ying Shan looked at Jiang Tian on the screen of light. Suddenly he was startled. They saw that Jiang Tian was still sitting cross-legged in the void. The aura on his body was faintly discernible. His body, which was originally shining with treasure light, was now dim and lifeless. He was like an ordinary mortal body, and was far less sharp than before. But at the same time, Ying Shan felt that Jiang Tian seemed to have existed for all eternity just by sitting there. Every action he made, every movement he made, every breath he took, was filled with a Tao aura as if it was in harmony with the great Tao. Could it be that you don't know that Master has the heaven-deceiving mysterious technique? He can restrain all aura, divine abilities and laws. Yi Gongming glanced at him and softly said. Ying Shan released his divine senses and carefully scanned the surroundings. He could feel that the endless laws in the world were resonating with Jiang Tian. With every breath he took, the uncontrollable laws would fluctuate and erupt with a tide of laws. They were situated in the world of laws, and Jiang Tian was like a deity who ruled over the endless laws. He was the ancestor of all deities, the sovereign of the heavens. Nascent soul, he succeeded? Ying Shan was frantically screaming in his heart. This heaven-deceiving mysterious technique was too tyrannical. It could actually allow him to avoid the nascent soul tribulation. Furthermore, what kind of law did he condense? It was unknown how many times stronger it was than ordinary deities. It was like he was a deity nurtured by the heavens and the earth. This law was a part of him. Actually, his feeling was not wrong. Even though Jiang Tian condensed a deity realm nascent soul, it was still a deity realm nascent soul. This deity realm did not refer to the deity realm. It referred to a deity nurtured by the heavens and the earth. It was also called an innate deity, a deity that came before the heavens and the earth. A life form of the deity world. And why were the life forms of the deity world powerful? It was because all the life forms there were formed by the great Tao. Manipulating the great Tao was like manipulating one's own body. It was as easy as manipulating one's own arm. Naturally, they were incomparably powerful. The life forms of the deity world far surpassed the life forms of the immortal laws, sacred laws, and laws. As for the origin chi life forms and the divine soul life forms, they were even more incomparable. It was not an exaggeration to say that a little rabbit that fell from the deity world could easily crush a deity transformation realm cultivator in the mortal universe. Who? Jiang Tian finally moved. He stretched his fleshy body, stepped on the ground and stretched his arms. Hong Long. The moment Jiang Tian landed on the ground, the area within a radius of 500 kilometers trembled violently. Many huge ravines split open and rapidly extended to dozens of kilometers away. Yi Gongming, Ying Shan and the others were shaken to the point of being thrown off their feet. And in the void, as Jiang Tian stretched his body, the vast and mighty Yuan Qi turned into a grade 12 storm that swept across the sky. Azure Dragon Mystic Water, Vermilion Bird True Fire, Sea Calming Ice God, Ying Long Thick Earth and many other laws appeared. Fragments of the great Tao floated up and down, almost turning into a sky visible to the naked eye. Behind Jiang Tian, There was a violent yuan qi storm that wreaked havoc in all directions, sweeping across the 9 heavens and 10 earths. Peng ping peng. The tall craters and ancient bases, despite having countless formations and restrictions, could no longer withstand the impact. After a wave of violent tremors, they were destroyed and turned into a tide of boulders that rolled far away. Ying Shan drilled into the ground and was almost crushed alive by the surging earth. He hurriedly escaped and hugged Yi Gongming's thigh, who was supporting his father in the void. He said with heartache, "The bases that have existed for tens of thousands of years. What a pity!" This was the first time Jiang Tian displayed this strength that had expanded by 10 to 100 times. He felt uncomfortable and did not expect it to be so terrifying. Looking at the great bandits who were blown dozens of kilometers away, Jiang Tian hurriedly retracted his aura. He cupped his fists towards Yi Gongming and smiled apologetically. "Senior, I'm sorry. I did not expect it to be like this." Yi Gongming took 2 deep breaths before dispelling that suffocating feeling. He laughed loudly, saying, "Ha, a master is too polite. Now that you are out of closed-door cultivation, do the generals of our new heavenly court still need this hidden base? We can just blow up the ruins, Emperor." Ying Shan immediately reacted after hearing that. He was ineffably excited and rubbed his palms together, saying, Right, Master, now that you are out of closed-door cultivation, we can finally go all out. We can revive our great mountains and rivers. This place is unbearably cold, without any light or plants. It's fine if we don't want it. Ha! Jiang Tian smiled faintly. He closed his eyes slightly and reflected on himself. His divine sense swept across his body, checking the results of this closed-door cultivation. His divine sense slowly swept across his sea of consciousness, nascent soul, 4 limbs, and 5 viscera and 6 bowels. After a long time, Jiang Tian finally opened his eyes slowly, revealing a joyous expression. Currently, his cultivation was at the true nascent soul realm in the deity world. His godly laws, godly body, and godly soul had all reached the highest realm. Immortal cultivators in the mortal realm usually focused on one aspect: chi refinement, body refinement, and spirit refinement. After all, very few people could take care of all 3 at the same time, cultivating all 3 to the peak. This consumed too much energy and resources. Disregarding other things, just condensing a golden core realm godly body for Jiang Tian had expended countless resources. Purely counting ordinary golden cores, he would have to plunder and condense thousands or even tens of thousands of them before he could condense them. In the mortal realm cultivation world, even those immortal holy grounds and peerless sects did not have such extravagant methods. To be able to cultivate all 3 at the same time, it had to be a top-grade immortal sect to have such a foundation. Counting, there were less than 10 in the entire mortal realm, or the major sects in the deity world. Therefore, Jiang Tian's current state was supreme and invincible among his peers in the central galaxy, not to mention in the mortal realm, even in the deity world. Not to mention the soul formation cultivators in the human realm, Jiang Tian could even fight with the soul formation cultivators in the deity world. At least, he had the ability to escape unscathed. As for the Ruins Emperor and the other giants of the Ruins of Immortality, they're just trash raised by incomplete cultivation systems at the edge of the barren land. With my current nascent soul cultivation, the 10,000 years of battle experience and the many divine arts I have accumulated in my previous life, as well as ancient treasures such as the Absolute Sword and the Myriad Stone Cauldron, as well as deity materials and divine materials, I don't believe that there's anyone I can't kill. Soon, Jiang Tian calmed himself down and a mocking smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He flicked his sleeves and said, "Open the gate of sky influence. We should go to the Ruins of Immortality to take a look." The next afternoon, in the middle of the Ruins of Immortality, deep inside the barren Shentian mountain range, a young man in black and 2 old men suddenly appeared in the forest. Many monsters around felt the powerful energy of the soul formation cultivators and were so scared that they knelt down and retreated. Of course, they were Jiang Tian, Yi Gongming, and Ying Shan. Yi Gongming still felt it was unbelievable. This wasn't the reception array of the Gate of Sky Influence. Instead, it was the place where the great co-warriors were hiding. The reception array they had arrived at was a few 100,000 miles away from here. However, after Jiang Tian confirmed the location, he waved his sleeves and brought them across a distance of several 100,000 miles in the time it took for half an incense stick to burn. After all, soul formation cultivators would need at least half a day or even 2 or 3 days. That speed was far faster than any other soul formation cultivators and was almost comparable to an ancient teleportation array. Master, you're finally here. Your subordinate congratulates you on your breakthrough and ascension to the limit, my lord. Master, we've failed our mission. We've failed miserably. We've tarnished the prestige of the new heavenly court. Please punish us. When a hidden array was activated and Jiang Tian entered the temporary stronghold, many great co-warriors kowtowed with tears in their eyes. Some were excited, some were hopeful, and some were guilty. It's not easy for you to hold on until now. Furthermore, you haven't lost. As long as you're alive and fighting, you haven't lost. Jiang Tian glanced at the cultivators there and saw that many of them were wounded. Even the 7 great bandits' leaders and Ji Tao were wounded. But Bai Muxue was the most seriously injured. At this time, she was lying on a bed made of ice crystals. Her delicate body was covered in countless wounds and blisters. The laws of fire surrounded her and even penetrated deep into her organs, constantly burning her dantian and soul. Her life was hanging by a thread and she had fainted from the pain. Seeing this, Jiang Tian's pupils shrank and his face was filled with anger. Last time in the Black Wind Mountain Range, we were discovered by the cultivators of the ruins of immortality. Bai Muxue stayed behind to use the array to stop the enemy. In the end, Divine Emperor Lai Hua personally took action. His law of fire was too strong and we couldn't get rid of it. Niu Duotian took a puff of his pipe and wiped his tears. Of course, he was a real man with unyielding character. He had experienced countless battles over the past few thousand years, and had seen too many deaths. When had he ever shed a single tear? Bai Muxue was simply too obedient and sensible. Now that she was in such a miserable state, his heart ached for her. Divine Emperor Lai Hua? Jiang Tian's face turned cold. He flicked his sleeves and said coldly, "Spread the news. Tell the world that the new heavenly court master, Kong Teichu, is waiting for him at the Black Heaven Mountain Range. If he has the guts, then bring it on. It's best if he brings his zombie ancestor, the old Ruins Emperor, with him. I'm going to twist their heads off." Chapter 1597. At this moment, Jiang Tian was very confident. Every word he said was like a peerless heavenly sword, with a soaring aura. The power of self-confidence, the sharpness, the indomitable spirit, made people feel a kind of firmness, invincibility, destroying everything. "My lord, we have to be careful." Yun Zhongzi walked over. He was a descendant of the ancient heavenly court's divine general. Although the immortal Crane bloodline was very faint, he had always been handsome and untainted. He was like an immortal that had descended to the mortal world. But now, his feather clothes were stained with blood and his star crown was broken. He couldn't even maintain his elegance during the battle. His expression was solemn and worried as he reminded Jiang Tian. After all, that was a divine emperor who had once swept through the ruins of immortality and defeated the great bandits. In terms of strength, he was second only to the peerless giants. "Pass down my order." Jiang Tian's face was as cold as iron, and his expression was firm. He was not moved at all, nor did he hesitate at all. He was very confident. After this breakthrough, he was no longer the same as before. His strength had increased greatly, more than 10 times or 100 times. He was not afraid at all. Moreover, the assassins of the great bandits had been defeated consecutively. They needed a great victory to boost their morale. Otherwise, the team might collapse. "Senior Yun Zhongzi, don't hesitate anymore. My lord is back, so we should take the initiative to attack and sweep through everything." Yi Chun roared loudly, his voice carrying a bit of resentment and anger. They had been chased by the army of the ruins of immortality for 2 months. They were like stray dogs, which made them sullen and angry. Yun Zhongzi, don't hesitate. Let's fight him. We should believe in the strength of His Majesty Tai Chu. Tu Fei and the Green Dragon King persuaded, their fighting spirit surging. Even if Jiang Tian was no match for him, they could still kill Divine Emperor Lai Hua together. Okay, I will obey your Majesty's order. Yun Zhongzi finally nodded. He gathered many disciples and asked them to spread the news to the entire ruins of immortality to lure Divine Emperor Lai Hua over. When Bai Muxue heard all this, she opened her eyes with difficulty and turned her head. She seemed to want to say something, but she was too injured to speak. Don't move. My cultivation base is different from before, and there are too many variables. Trying to deduce the outcome of this battle will be futile. Jiang Tian smiled and placed his hand on Bai Muxue's forehead. Bai Muxue closed her eyes obediently, but she was a little embarrassed. She turned her head away and said sadly, "My lord, I'm too ugly like this. I can't see you." A drop of tear rolled down from the corner of her eye, but it was evaporated by the law of fire. Her love for Jiang Tian ran deep. In fact, Jiang Tian was such a peerless hero. Which girl wouldn't fall in love with him? Whether it was her, Long Shengnan, Princess Li Qi, or Ao Jiao, all of them more or less had feelings for Jiang Tian. However, they knew that the relationship between Jiang Tian and his wife was very deep and dignified, so they didn't dare to casually reveal it. Silly girl, beauty and ugliness are just superficial appearances. Why do you care so much about it? Jiang Tian smiled. But, I hope that in your memory, I'm the beautiful girl who played the zither and sang on the fallen leaf lake. Bai Muxue turned her head, and her eyes were filled with tears of blood. She stared at Jiang Tian and said affectionately, "I know that you and Mistress have a deep relationship, and you definitely won't like me. However, I'll fight to the death for your ideals and your struggle. In the future, you will definitely remember me deeply. At that time, I'll live in your memory and occupy a place. That's my greatest fortune." Her voice was choked with sobs, like a cuckoo crying blood. Long Shengnan and the other female cultivators turned their backs and cried silently. Jiang Tian heard this and his heart trembled slightly. He said softly, "Is that why you stayed behind and used the array to stop the Inferno Divine Emperor? Even if I didn't take the initiative to attack, the Inferno Divine Emperor would not let me go. I've been spreading your deeds in the Penglai world every day. The Empire of the Immortal Ruins has already listed me as a must-kill." She suddenly showed a smile. The blisters on her face were squeezed together and burst. Blood flowed down her face. She said softly, "Let's not talk about this. My dejected lord, I feel very peaceful to be able to wait until you come back before I die." As she spoke, her eyes became as gentle as water, and she said with infinite longing, "You seem to have become stronger, just like the hero in my dream. My lord, I believe that you will definitely be able to realize your dreams. It's good that I die with such a perfect memory. In my memory, you will always be so perfect. You won't die." Jiang Tian's tone changed for the first time. He looked into Bai Muxue's eyes with unprecedented seriousness and said firmly, "As long as I, Kong Teichu, am here, you won't die. Even if you die, I will use your divine soul seed and the creation substance to help you reconstruct your body. From today onwards, no one in this world will be able to harm the people who belong to me, Jiang Taichu. This is my promise to you." After he finished speaking, his face became serious and he activated the divine law. Swallow. Crack. The nascent soul in Jiang Tian's body suddenly opened its eyes, and the Taotai divine law rushed out of the small divine disk behind him. The divine law turned into the form of the Taotai divine beast and sat above Bai Muxue. It only opened its mouth and inhaled. Crackle. The Inferno divine law, which was originally indestructible and could melt everything, even had fragments of the great path floating up and down. It was like a piece of paper, cracking and turning into a trickle. The Taotai divine law was like a whale sucking in water. In the blink of an eye, it was swallowed up and quickly returned to Jiang Tian's body. She broke the Inferno Divine Emperor's divine law so easily? There are even fragments of the Great Path. You really have to look at her in a different light. My lord has evolved to the extreme and become stronger. Moreover, she is unprecedentedly strong. Many of the great bandits and heroes were stunned to the extreme. They could feel the strength of Jiang Tian's divine law. Even Jiyusha, who had always disliked Jiang Tian, was stunned and muttered, maybe she really is qualified to fight with the Inferno Divine Emperor. Whirling Divine Tree, create all things. Jiang Tian shouted again. The whirling divine tree appeared above by Mushue again. The divine law was like a green silk ribbon, nourishing all things and creating life. This whirling divine tree was 10 times stronger than before. It was full of surging life energy. Starlight shone between the branches and leaves, as if it contained a small world full of life energy. It was constantly rotating and growing. I told you, you won't die. Jiang Tian let out a low roar and performed a hand seal, pointing at Bai Mushue in the air. In front of Bai Mushue's shocked eyes, countless runes formed by the divine tree's divine law shone with a bright green light and enveloped Bai Mushue. Bai Mushue felt as if she had returned to her mother's womb. She had never felt that kind of warmth, comfort, and security. Amidst the exclamations of the crowd, the blisters on Bai Mushue's body cracked and faded away. Her snow-white skin regrew. Even her internal organs and damaged dantian were restored in a matter of seconds. The entire stronghold was full of vitality. The divine tree's divine law floated up and down, as if it were the realm of deities. At this time, an explosive piece of news spread throughout the boundless ruins of immortality, shaking everyone's hearts. Kang Techu is back. He challenged the Inferno Divine Emperor to a battle on the Tianxian mountain range. He said that he would twist the Inferno Divine Emperor's head off. The entire ruins of deities was dumbfounded. Is Kang Techu crazy? How dare he challenge the Inferno Divine Emperor? The sect master of the Tianmong Grotto Heaven sneered. Next to him, Zhao Shanhe and a few elders also sneered. The last battle that Jiang Tian had observed was when Jiang Tian fought with Ban Shan, Black, White and Sword Servant Tong Yujin. When they killed Tong Yujin, Jiang Tian didn't do anything because he used Tong Yujin as a whetstone for the leaders of the bandits. The battle at the Watermoon Grotto Heaven hadn't been exposed yet. In fact, the Watermoon Grotto Heaven had become a mole and had been sending messages to the bandits. Otherwise, the latter might have been eliminated. So, in the eyes of the cultivators of the ruins of deities, Jiang Tian's strength was only on par with Ban Shan's. But Ban Shan and the others were much weaker than the Inferno Divine Emperor. The gap between Jiang Tian and the others should also be huge, or even bigger. Perhaps Jiang Taichu deliberately set up a maze to lure you into the trap. He wants to join forces to kill the Inferno Divine Emperor? He defeated the Inferno Divine Emperor with his own strength? I don't care if you believe it or not, but I don't. The sect master of the Tianji Grotto Heaven thought of another possibility. In the face of absolute strength, all schemes and tricks are nothing. The leader of another large sect sneered. Kang Techu is just a coward. He's running around and doesn't dare to fight head-on. If he shows up, he'll be killed. If Kang Techu is a coward, he should have the self-awareness of a coward. He should hide in a dark corner and eat some leftovers. Why does he have to jump out? Does he think he's a dragon in the sky? Song Baoxin said mockingly in the cafeteria of the academy. Next to him, the dark-skinned servant, a Sang, covered her mouth and chuckled. Haha, Song Baoxin, that's a good analogy. Cheng Aojuan, Su Changqing and the other elite disciples also laughed. The disciples of the academy were still the descendants of the deity land and were selected from the level 2 and level 3 worlds. But interests would make people forget history. They didn't think they were the descendants of the Sheng and Ao emperors. They didn't want to look into it, or even if they knew the truth, they wouldn't care. But, brother, I have an idea. Brothers, please take a look. Song Baoxin had just entered the war god role in an examination and was able to enter the back mountain of the academy. He had even been taught by the headmaster, Ban Shan and Jade Lotus Fairy. So, his status had become very high and he was on par with Su Chongqing and the others. He was also in high spirits. I heard that Kong Teichu and Dako are killing and robbing everywhere. They have a lot of resources. Should we take advantage of this? Okay. Kong Teichu is dead. Let's kill him while he's weak. Let's take his treasures while he's dead. Su Chongqing's eyes were filled with resentment as he spoke viciously. In the battle between Jiang Tian and the sword servant in the steel forest, his arm was cut off by the sword servant's sword chi. Later, he asked the Grand Chancellor of the Academy's back mountain to help him and he was able to create a new Kylin arm. The pain of that day caused him to always harbor hatred towards Jiang Tian. It was strange. He was injured by the sword servant, but he hated Jiang Tian. Maybe he thought that Jiang Tian was easy to bully, or maybe he was used to being a servant, so he didn't hate his master anymore. The disciples of the academy immediately reached an agreement and formed a troop of disciples to head to the Xiantian mountain range. Not only the disciples of the academy. In fact, all the grotto heavens, large sects, families, small and medium-sized sects and even some gangs were heading to the Xiantian mountain range to witness the death of Kong Teichu and the power of the burning fire divine emperor. More importantly, they wanted to hit Jiang Tian when he was down, take advantage of the chaos, and snatch the cultivation resources of Jiang Tian and the assassins. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.